Chapter 904. Who are you? Zhou Xuanji asked vigilantly. The sovereigns had just left, and a mysterious person had infiltrated the sovereign's plane. This meant that this person's cultivation was extraordinary. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to appear at this juncture. The figure in the light smiled and said, Zhou Xuanji, don't be nervous. I'm not your enemy. Zhou Xuanji frowned. This voice was so familiar, as though he had heard it before. It seems like you really don't remember me. That's right, you have already become a sovereign who dominates the Kunlun origin court. How could you remember your opponent from back then? However, we haven't become opponents yet. What a pity, the other party continued with a smile, his tone filled with ridicule. As the light dissipated, a man wearing a noble golden robe appeared. His face was cold, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. His eyes were like a king's, domineering and sharp. He wore a purple gold crown on his head, and he exuded a proud aura that looked down on all living things. Sunlight Emperor. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. Why was this guy here? In the past, in the northern wilderness region, Sunlight Emperor had suppressed Xian Xianghua for thousands of years and dominated the first throne in the world. When the boundless world attacked, in order to obtain the heavenly law stone, Sunlight Emperor was sucked into the space-time turbulence and disappeared. After so many years, Zhou Xuanji had thought that he had died long ago. I didn't expect this guy to still be alive. Judging from his aura, he was also a Grand Supreme Master. Could it be that this guy was involved in another timeline like Shen Nianqing and Hongqian Supreme? Seeing Zhou Xuanji's expression, Sunlight Emperor loudly laughed and said, Do you not dare to believe it? To be honest, I'm even more shocked than you are. Originally, I thought that you were just one of my regrets in the past, but I didn't expect your growth to be so exaggerated. You actually became a great supreme of the second court in such a short time. In terms of talent, I really can't compare to you. In fact, I can even say that I'm far from you. It's like the difference between heaven and earth. Zhou Xuanji did not care about his flattery and asked, Why are you here? What do you want? Although Sunlight Emperor was not hostile, he had sneaked into the supreme plane without any warning. How could he not be vigilant? I heard your call for help and came to help. We are old friends. Don't tell me you don't welcome me. He flew up to Zhou Xuanji, looked at Little Sovereign, and nodded slightly. Little Sovereign looked at him and didn't say anything. When he saw him approaching, he said, You must have obtained the soul fusion inheritance of a sovereign. Soul fusion inheritance? What was that? Zhou Xuanji looked at Little Sovereign in confusion. That's right, that person is my benefactor. I promised him that I would protect the Kunlun origin court. Now that Zhou Xuanji is the sovereign of the Kunlun origin court, I will naturally not oppose him. He could tell that Zhou Xuanji was still very resistant to him, so he did his best to prove his position. Little Supreme stared at Sunlight Emperor and said, The soul fusion inheritance is to dedicate everything, including your soul, to the inheritor. Your own will be completely annihilated. This kind of inheritance can allow the inheritor's cultivation and realm to soar in an extremely short period of time. It's very stable. Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows. Yang Di's luck was that good? What kind of sacrifice did he have to make for the other party to be willing to help him? Yang Di sighed and said, Zhou Xuanji, you said that the 9 absolutes of Qilin want to revive Cardinal Heaven. I'm willing to join you and fight against the 9 absolutes of Qilin. Cardinal Heaven is the ancestor of my benefactor, and it cannot be blasphemed. Zhou Xuanji nodded and asked, What's your stage? Sunlight Emperor replied, The great supreme masters of the 3 courts have just broken through. He was 1 court higher than Zhou Xuanji, but he wasn't complacent. Based on his understanding of Zhou Xuanji, this gap wouldn't last long. The soul fusion inheritance will make your cultivation improve steadily. Zhou Xuanji will have to spend a lot of effort to catch up with you, Little Sovereign said with a smile. Little Sovereign laughed with his hands on his hips. Sunlight Emperor also laughed. He could hear the hidden meaning in Little Supreme Expert's words. Spend a lot of effort. What a good choice of words. Sunlight Emperor didn't refute. He shrugged and said with a smile, "Since you have agreed, I will wait for you at the Thunder Alliance." After saying this, he turned into a ball of true sun fire, spinning and shrinking before quickly disappearing. Little Sovereign clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "It's really interesting. The Kunlun Origin Court has produced a lot of people with great luck in this period. It seems that it often encounters disasters, but in fact, it is showing signs of revival. Maybe it will restore the prosperity of the ancient times under your leadership. You need to encourage more geniuses to grow." Zhou Xuanji nodded. He began thinking about how to discover and stimulate geniuses. A grand event like the Superstar competition was not bad. However, it would be easier to find geniuses if it was developed and divided into different thresholds. He thought as he returned to the Supreme Hall. The people of the Kunlun Origin Court didn't know that the previous Supremes had just returned and helped them resolve a disaster. The Supreme Martial Artists didn't show themselves. They didn't even leave behind a word. Perhaps from their point of view, they didn't want their descendants to have any lingering thoughts. Only by relying on themselves could they truly pass on their legacy. The ancestors could not protect the descendants forever. In the space-time vortex where thunder and lightning interweaved, the giant ship of the Qilin 9 Absolutes was still sailing. Qilin Ancient Desolation sat on the deck, quietly cultivating. He suddenly opened his eyes and exclaimed in shock, "Jiang Feili is dead? Impossible. Who could kill him? Could it be those old monsters?" He immediately began to deduce Jiang Feili. However, Jiang Feili had isolated his own fate when he was still alive, fearing that he would be able to divine it. The Qilin Ancient Desolate's deduction was fruitless. He frowned and fell into deep thought. Qilin Mei came from behind, bent down and asked, "Big brother, what are you thinking about?" She rarely saw the ancient desolate Qilin in such a state of unease. The other Qilin 7 Absolutes who were cultivating also opened their eyes and looked at Qilin Ancient Desolation in doubt. "Jiang Feili is dead," the Qilin Ancient Desolation calmly said. As soon as he said this, all the Qilin Absolute were shocked. Jiang Feili had always been a formidable enemy of the Qilin 9 Absolutes. After countless years of fighting, they were unable to kill the other party. Now that they heard about Jiang Feili's tragic death, they were shocked and even more terrified. Who exactly killed Jiang Feili? The Qilin 9 Absolutes might seem majestic, but the boundless universe was vast. They did not dare to claim to be invincible. "Are we still going to carry out the Myriad Domain Devil Air plan?" a tall black figure asked solemnly. The Qilin Ancient Desolation glanced at him and said coldly, "Of course. The other party is Jiang Feili's enemy, not ours. Moreover, if we control that power, why would we be afraid?" Hearing this, everyone felt that it made sense. However, their hearts were shrouded in a shadow that could not dissipate for a long time. At that time, I will ask an ancient great expert to take action to ensure that nothing goes wrong. He still owes me a favor. The Qilin Ancient Desolation continued to say, causing everyone to become excited. "Who?" a Qilin Absolute asked. The Qilin Ancient Desolation spat out a single word, "Hui." The others immediately opened their eyes wide and sucked in a breath of cold air. The Qilin Mei carefully asked, "Big brother, isn't this too risky?" Chapter 905. Isn't taking risks our norm? Why, are you suddenly afraid now? If you are afraid, then disband the Qilin 9 Absolutes. Ancient Desolation frowned and shouted coldly. His face was filled with impatience. In the outside world, the Qilin 9 Absolutes were extremely awe-inspiring. Over time, Ancient Desolation had become extremely arrogant. Seeing his companions being afraid, he was very angry. The Qilin 9 Absolutes didn't dare to dissuade him anymore. Ancient Desolation let out a cold snort before turning around and walking toward the pavilion. The others looked at each other with different expressions. They were angry but didn't dare to speak. The atmosphere on the giant ship became extremely depressing. The Qilin 9 Absolutes each had their own agenda. They seemed to be united but in fact, they had already fallen apart internally. Kunlun Origin Court, supreme palace, Zhou Xuanji was meditating and cultivating with the Emperor's sword hovering above his head. The Emperor's sword of life and death was transformed from the soul source orb and the all lives brush. It was one with the Kunlun origin court. Zhou Xuanji was absorbing the power of the Kunlun origin court through the Emperor's sword of life and death. His absorption method wasn't a one-sided absorption but a win-win method. He fused his supreme divine power with the power of the Kunlun origin court, intertwining and tempering each other. He then guided the energy outside the Kunlun origin court to achieve a great cycle, consolidating the strength of himself and the origin court. Under such a cultivation method, Zhou Xuanji's cultivation had been steadily improving. However, he was still far from breaking through to the great sovereign of the three courts. He couldn't see the end. A soul flew out from the lesser supreme sword next to him. Little sovereign stretched and yawned, asking, "Kid, why are you still cultivating? You really don't stop for a moment." With the death of Jiang Feili, Zhou Xuanji's only enemy was the Qilin 9 Absolutes. However, the Qilin 9 Absolutes were being targeted by other sages. If he was Zhou Xuanji, he would definitely take a break. One couldn't just cultivate all the time in one's life. Not to mention that Zhou Xuanji was already very strong. He was a sovereign above the Kunlun origin court. "Is there any movement from Shenyanqing recently?" Zhou Xuanji asked without opening his eyes. Ever since Jiang Feili died, he had been asking Little Sovereign to pay attention to Shenyanqing. Shenyanqing was wandering around the Kunlun origin court as if she was looking for something. Little Sovereign shook his head and said, "I don't know. I always feel that a power is recovering in her body. Could this girl be someone else in disguise?" With this, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and frowned instinctively. The term "little supreme being" was too terrifying. If Shenyanqing was not Shenyanqing, wouldn't he be surrounded by danger during this period of time? "Do you have any proof?" Zhou Xuanji asked. Little Sovereign shook his head in response. He smiled and said, "I was just guessing." He then changed the topic and said, "Speaking of which, everything has a price. The speed of your cultivation breakthrough is already exaggerated enough. The same is true for Shenyanqing, Shentang, and Yang Di. I guess they will have to pay a painful price. Shentang will forever be trapped in the sovereign realm of laws. It will be difficult for her to become a great supreme being. That Sunlight Emperor seems to be high-spirited and in an extraordinary state. However, the soul fusion inheritance is not so perfect. I can feel that his eyes are abnormal. There are two souls in them. As for the divine pinching star, I can't see it at the moment, which means there's a problem." Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. Listening to Little Sovereign's words, it seemed that Shenyanqing and the other two were about to face misfortune. Puzzled, he asked, "Wait. Why does Yang Di have two souls? Didn't you say that the soul fusion inheritance is the most perfect inheritance method?" Little Sovereign suddenly smiled. His smile was extremely sinister. He said in a meaningful tone, "I was just bluffing. When he first appeared, I noticed that there was another soul in his eyes. I know that guy. He used to be in existence like the evil mother spirit controller. I deliberately said that to make Yang Di let his guard down. How despicable." Zhou Xuanji looked at Little Sovereign with a complicated look in his eyes. This guy is too sinister. Will he plot against me in the future? Little Sovereign faked a cough and said, "What do you mean? I have done my best for you. You actually doubt me. It hurts me so much." Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at him. He didn't bother to answer. After a few breaths of silence, Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but ask, "What will happen to Yang Di? Will he be possessed?" Yang Di's return this time showed kindness to him, which changed his impression of Yang Di. The thought that the high-spirited Yang Di was about to be possessed made him feel a little uncomfortable in his heart. Who knows? Anyway, it won't end well. Don't even think about intervening. You have already been targeted by the ancient life lamp. Do you want to be targeted by another evil? Little Sovereign snorted. Zhou Xuanji didn't think much about it. Yang Di had his own life. He didn't care about it. He changed the topic to supreme crimson dust. Don't ask. When the time comes, you will understand everything. Instead of worrying about others, it's better to think about yourself, Little Sovereign said impatiently. Little Sovereign said impatiently. How come this brat's heart warmed up after becoming a sovereign? This isn't a good thing. Perhaps because he absorbed the power of the Kunlun origin court, this kid has seen too many things in the world. He rolled his eyes and began to think about how to refine Zhou Xuanji's Dao heart. In a great world, Shen Nianqing strolled forward. Gloomy mist billowed. She was surrounded by mountains that looked like giant devils. She raised her right hand and said to her palm, "Is it here?" A pair of eyes emerged from her palm. This pair of eyes was cold and filled with evil qi. It turned forward. Shen Nianqing immediately understood and continued moving forward. Rumble. The earth suddenly shook violently. Coffins covered in soil rose from the ground, raising a cloud of dust. The giant mountain in front of her directly broke as if it had been split in half by a divine sword. Shen Nianqing's face was expressionless. She turned into a ray of light and flew between the two halves of the mountain, disappearing without a trace. After 10 breaths, mortal sovereign appeared. She frowned and looked over, murmuring, "Sure enough." Her eyes turned cold, and her body dissipated into wisps of the red dust qi, sinking into the flying dust. Supreme Palace, Zhou Xuanji was still cultivating when Little Sovereign woke him up. That girl has started to act. I'm very curious. Is there any secret hidden in the Kunlun origin court? Little Sovereign said with narrowed eyes. Even a sovereign couldn't completely see through the Kunlun origin court. For example, Sovereign Kong Sheng had been hiding in the origin court to cultivate for countless years, unknown to anyone. Zhou Xuanji activated the exterminating divine eyes and locked onto Shen Nianqing's aura. But he couldn't see what Shen Nianqing was doing. There was a layer of mysterious power that isolated Zhou Xuanji's divine will, making it impossible for him to spy on Shen Nianqing. This kind of power wasn't strong. It was extremely weak, but it could completely block the divine will of a sovereign. Is what you said true? Zhou Xuanji murmured. A cold gleam flashed in his eyes. If this Shen Nianqing wasn't the real Shen Nianqing and she would harm the Kunlun origin court, then he wouldn't show any mercy. Keep watching and you will understand. I hope that what she is looking for is not what I fear the most, Little Sovereign said, shaking his head. His tone was full of deep meaning. Chapter 906. Oh. What do you fear the most in the Kunlun origin court? Zhou Xuanji asked. He could see every corner of the Kunlun origin court, but that was only on the surface. He couldn't see all the planes thoroughly. Little Supreme shrugged and said, "It's an evil treasure more powerful than the soul source bead and the all lives brush. You can't even say its name, or you will suffer a backlash." Zhou Xuanji frowned. Why did the Kunlun origin court hide such a terrifying evil treasure? Wait a minute. Could it be related to the Holy Ghost? Ever since he had become a supreme being, Nanmu Tianyi had sealed the Holy Ghost in an independent plane and made the Tianyi divine range guard it. Although the Holy Ghost had stopped moving, the panic it had caused back then was still vivid in his mind. Zhou Xuanji had to be cautious. Why is the Holy Ghost born? Listening to Little Sovereign's previous words, he obviously knew the Holy Ghost's body. Could it be that it was because of this evil treasure that someone became a Holy Ghost? He looked up at Little Sovereign and asked with his eyes. Little Sovereign nodded slightly. Some things could not be said, but they could be communicated with eye contact. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. It seemed like he couldn't completely abandon the Kunlun origin court in the future. If something exploded in the Kunlun origin court, wouldn't it be a monstrous disaster? This had been the case when Wu Zhou had been in power. In the rolling black mist, Shen Nianqing floated in the air. She looked down. The mountain stream below was like an abyss, dark and gloomy, and the whistling wind was like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. She raised her right hand with her palm facing downwards. Her eyes widened, and two streaks of bloody light shot out, breaking through the strands of black mist and penetrating downwards. Rumble, the earth shook and a terrifying aura erupted. The wind was blowing wildly, blowing Shen Nianqing's hair. She squinted her eyes, trying to see everything below. Xiao! A scepter that looked like scorched wood suddenly rushed out. A fist-sized bead of blood was embedded in the top of the scepter. Fresh blood kept flowing out of it, making it look extremely terrifying. Shen Nianqing immediately stretched out her hand and grabbed the blood bead black staff. She frowned, her right hand trembling. Meanwhile, the entire Kunlun Origin Court was shrouded in a terrifying aura. All living beings felt an inexplicable sense of panic, as if a great disaster was about to befall them. What happened? Could it be that another supreme martial artist from outside the court has come to attack? That's impossible. How long has it been? The calamity of the Kunlun Origin Court is coming again. Everyone, be careful. What a terrifying feeling. Even when I faced the Sword Emperor back then, I did not feel so terrified. Don't be afraid, we have a supreme being. He will protect us. All the creatures in the divine ranges were discussing this matter in fear, comforting each other. Zhou Xuanji appeared beside Shen Nianqing out of thin air and grabbed her wrist. In an instant, a sinister and powerful force entered his body through his palm, wreaking havoc in his muscles and bones. He frowned and immediately used his supreme god force to resist. The two powers clashed, and with an explosion, Zhou Xuanji's consciousness exploded. Following this, he saw scenes. The Grand Sovereigns held the blood bead black staff and laughed wildly. Their postures and smiles were the same, crazy and evil. What is this? Zhou Xuanji was shocked. Could these be scenes of the previous owners of the blood bead's black staff wielding it? Could these great supremes be the supremes of the Kunlun Origin Court? The scene kept changing, getting faster and faster. Zhou Xuanji wanted to break free from this illusion, but he felt an extremely powerful suppression on his soul, making it impossible for him to break free. Humph. Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed as he cast the sword fusion technique. At the same time, he created countless avatars that rushed in all directions. Boom! 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 The surrounding illusions shattered one after another. Gusts of wind swept over like the turbulence of time and space. He took the opportunity to cast the exterminating divine light to destroy everything as his consciousness returned to reality. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was Shen Nianqing's face. Her face turned hideous as blood streaks crawled up her cheeks. Her long hair turned white, fluttering in the wind. She grabbed the blood bead black staff with both hands, looking extremely crazy. She wouldn't let go no matter what. At this moment, she seemed to have become another person. A person that Zhou Xuanji had never seen before. The Lesser Supreme Sword appeared behind him as Little Sovereign's voice came. Sure enough, it's this thing. Don't worry about her, run. His tone was incomparably anxious and terrified. Just as Zhou Xuanji was about to let go, Mortal Sovereign flew over from afar. Pinching star. Mortal Sovereign reached out and grabbed Shen Nianqing's shoulder. Zhou Xuanji's eyes widened as he shouted, "Get away." As soon as he said this, Mortal Sovereign's hand fell on Shen Nianqing's shoulder. Zhou Xuanji could clearly feel the strange force fiercely attacking Mortal Sovereign's hand. He immediately used his supreme divine power to block it. But even so, he couldn't completely block it. Mortal Sovereign gritted his teeth, lowered his head, and let out a painful groan. She looked at Shen Nianqing and said with difficulty, "Pinching star, what are you trying to do?" The devil-like Shen Nianqing glanced at her and said with a sinister smile, "Stupid, do you really think I'm your sister? Your sister is already dead. I'm already a different person." Hearing this, Mortal Sovereign's pupils suddenly shrank. She was dumbfounded. All along, she had been looking for Shen Nianqing as her goal. After learning that Shen Nianqing had already died, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She seemed to have lost her soul, forgetting her own pain. "Then who the hell are you?" Zhou Xuanji asked, staring at Shen Yanqing. His intuition told him that the person in front of him was Shen Yanqing. Could it be that she has been possessed? Shen Yanqing looked at him and said with a contemptuous smile, "You don't deserve to know my name. I can only tell you that Shen Yanqing is indeed my previous identity. But she has already fallen in the passage between the two worlds. I'm just using her identity to gain a foothold. Let me go, and you and I can still maintain a friendly relationship. If you insist on stopping me, you will regret it." She pulled hard, trying to take away the blood bead black staff. But Zhou Xuanji's strength continued to increase. She couldn't take it away by force. Little Sovereign's voice rang in Zhou Xuanji's ears, "Let her go. This thing isn't a good treasure. She will reap what she sowed. The real treasure is down there. This kind of evil thing can be suppressed. Naturally, there is something that is not weaker than it." Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. He hesitated for a moment before letting go. Shen Yanqing's smile was extremely evil. With a shake of her shoulder, Mortal Sovereign was sent flying back while vomiting blood. The blood bead black staff in her hand quickly disappeared. "Zhou Xuanji, after getting along with you during this period of time, I still like you very much. We will meet again in the future. At that time, you will see my true body. At that time, I will let you understand how powerful I am." Shen Yanqing burst into laughter. Her voice echoed between the heavens and the earth for a long time. Zhou Xuanji took Mortal Sovereign into his arms and healed her. He scanned her with his divine will, but he could no longer find Shen Yanqing. "What the hell does she want?" Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. His heart was filled with anger. Little Sovereign's voice rang in his ear, "Quick! Go down. Don't let it run away. This is a great opportunity." Chapter 907. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and put Mortal Sovereign down. Then, he swooped down and disappeared into the dark mountain stream. After about 15 breaths of time, he suddenly rushed out, holding a red bead that was surrounded by flames. It was as big as a human head and looked very similar to the blood beads on the black staff. Compared to the blood pearl, this red pearl had more righteous qi. Holding it in his hand, Zhou Xuanji's eyes were filled with passion. What a powerful strength! Every time his spiritual force probed inside, his soul would tremble. He even felt that if he tried to force his way in, his soul would be severely injured. "What is the name of this treasure?" Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice. He cast a glance at Sovereign Hong Chen, who was healing himself in the distance. Autark crimson dust flew over, an ugly look on her face. The injuries she had sustained had caused her to lose a great deal of blood, and even her soul had been damaged. But what hurt her the most was her heart. Knowing that Shen Yanqing had died a long time ago, Hong Chen's supremacy lost his soul and lost his purpose of living. She came before Zhou Xuanji but did not congratulate him. She was still in a daze. "I don't know the origins of this orb either. There are no records of its name in history either. I've only seen it once, and that was when my master took me on an adventure. I came back to search for it after I became a sovereign, but I was forced into retreat by the evil being from before. My cultivation as a great sovereign of the three courts directly dropped to reciprocity sovereign. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have died so easily back then." Little Sovereign replied with a sigh in his tone. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Was it really that terrifying? Fortunately, he didn't forcibly take away the blood bead black staff. Otherwise, he would have followed in the footsteps of Little Supreme Master. He immediately led red bead and Autark crimson dust away. Inside the Supreme Hall, Zhou Xuanji sat on the golden throne. He looked down at Hong Chen Sovereign and said with a frown, "Don't think too much. I think she is Shen Yanqing. It's just that her body might be occupied by another person. I can feel her soul. After all, I have the soul origin." Upon hearing this, Autark Crimson Dust jerked his head up, a look of delight on his face. "Your task now is to work hard on your cultivation. Rather than being depressed, why not work hard? What do you think?" Zhou Xuanji said earnestly. Supreme Crimson Dust took a deep breath and tried to adjust his mood. She nodded at Zhou Xuanji and left. Looking at her back, Zhou Xuanji did not try to persuade her anymore. If it were him, he would also want to be alone. He sighed softly, then took out the red bead and observed it carefully. The Lesser Supreme Sword appeared next to him. Little Supreme Sword floated out and excitedly said, "Hurry up and give it a name." Although he didn't know the origin of this treasure, nor did he know how strong it was, he believed that the red pearl represented a great opportunity that even grand sovereigns would find difficult to obtain. Zhou Xuanji said, "Let's call it the Fated Fate Pearl." It meant that he had come across an opportunity. Little Sovereign rolled his eyes and said, "This name is too vulgar, quickly change it." Zhou Xuanji's eyes sparkled as he stared at the Fated Fate Pearl and said, "I believe this is its name, now and in the future." He played with the Fated Fate bead repeatedly, trying to see through it. In his eyes, the Fated Fate Pearl was very mysterious, and this kind of mystery had an irresistible attraction to him. If you want to comprehend its true essence, I'm afraid you can't find the answer in the Kunlun Origin Court. You have to go to the Endless Universe. Little Sovereign continued. His tone was heavy as he warned, "Don't take out the Fated Fate Pearl outside, to avoid unnecessary trouble." Zhou Xuanji nodded and began thinking about when to leave. He also wanted to go to the Thunder Alliance and the Yen Alliance. There was also the illusory god realm that Hong Qin Saint Lord had mentioned. The endless universe was so big. There must be many mysteries that he couldn't imagine. "Maybe this pearl will change your fate," Little Sovereign said meaningfully. Little Sovereign said meaningfully as his eyes flickered. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I have already become a grand sovereign. Is there still a fate to speak of?" In response, Little Sovereign just smiled and didn't say anything. In the dark void, Shen Nianqing was sitting on an old tree. Under the tree was a meteorite shining with a metallic luster. She was looking at the blood bead black staff with a frown. Why not? Could it be that the bead has weakened its power? As soon as she thought of the Fated Fate Pearl, her eyes turned cold. The Fated Fate Pearl had a great restraining effect on her. She didn't dare to touch it. She looked ahead and murmured, "It seems that I have to go to that place." She held the blood bead black staff tightly, absorbing its power. A light appeared in front of her. The old tree swayed as leaves drifted down. She immediately got up and said, "Who dares to play tricks in front of me?" Balls of raging flames swept out from the bright light, like a blooming flower of fire, bright and beautiful. "Humph, evildoer, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Li Yingyo's cold snort resounded, causing Shen Nianqing to narrow her eyes. Sure enough. When they gathered outside the Kunlun Origin Court last time, this guy had seen through her identity. Shen Nianqing didn't panic. Instead, she grinned and said, "Kid, do you want to experience the pain of the past again?" Li Yingyu stepped out of the fireworks. His face was filled with killing intent. He coldly smiled and said, "That was the past. I have been reborn and you are no longer as invincible as you were in the past." His eyes locked onto the blood bead black staff. A fiery light flashed in his eyes. Shen Nianqing raised the blood bead black staff and sneered, "What? You want it? Are you worthy?" After saying this, she waved the staff and struck forward. Li Yingyu didn't retreat. Instead, he charged toward her. Hundreds of years later, Zhou Xuanji, Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, and Xian Xianghua gathered in front of the Supreme Palace. He looked at the three women and said with a smile, "It's okay, it's not life and death. No need to frown." Xian Xianghua curled her lips and said, "Since it's not dangerous, why didn't you take me with you?" Her cultivation had already reached Origin Fusion Divine Lord 8th level. She was still far from 9th level. Not making progress for a long time made her very annoyed. "Yes, the gap between us and you is getting bigger and bigger," Zhou Shaoxian nodded and said with a pitiful look on her face. She was hoping that Zhou Xuanji would agree. Jiang Shui, on the other hand, was very calm. She just looked at him quietly. Zhou Xuanji glared at them and said, "When I am strong enough, I will take you out sooner or later. Don't forget what I said to all living beings before. We will expand out sooner or later. When the time comes, you will be able to go out." Zhou Xiaoxian wanted to continue, but she was stopped by Jiang Shui. "Listen to your father, we have to believe in him," Jiang Shui said with a soft smile, looking at Zhou Xuanji with gentle eyes. Zhou Xuanji took her hand and said, "The superstar competition is about to begin. This is a brand new superstar competition. You must pay close attention and prepare well. I will leave an outer soul doppelganger to help you. You can contact me if you have any trouble." Jiang Shui nodded and said excitedly, "I will try my best." Zhou Xuanji looked at Xian Xianghua and said, "You have to help her too." Xian Xianghua rolled her eyes at him and snorted, "Nonsense, of course." Chapter 908. After chatting with his family for a while, Zhou Xuanji left on his sword. Jiang Shui raised her head and muttered, "I really hope I can see the scene of the Kunlun Origin Court attacking the endless universe." Xian Xianghua put an arm around her shoulders and smiled. "Don't worry. That day won't be long. The speed at which this brat grows is something we can never imagine." Zhou Xiaoxian rubbed her chin and pondered. She was thinking about the difference between her and Zhou Xuanji. She had now begun to be independent. Although she had gained a lot of training in the Kunlun Origin Court, she was increasingly aware of how insignificant she was. Only when she faced everything alone could she truly feel how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. "Wanshan Great Thousand has an opportunity that I left for you. Go." Zhou Xuanji's voice suddenly came into Zhou Xiaoshuan's ears, which stunned her. Her eyes reddened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she laughed. Passing through the darkness, Zhou Xuanji flew on his sword. He played with the faded fate pearl in his hand, thinking about its profoundness. Little Sovereign, who was floating behind him, was also thinking. They were already obsessed with the faded pearl. Little Sovereign was even more frantic than Zhou Xuanji. At first, he was patient. He wanted to wait until he went to the endless universe before comprehending this treasure. But when he saw Zhou Xuanji meditating, his heart itched. This is not. Because he couldn't suppress his curiosity, he also fell into the trap. He and Zhou Xuanji could look at the faded fate pearl for many years without moving. The two of them walked aimlessly, their gazes locked onto the faded pearl. In the blink of an eye, they flew past dozens of planes and territories. During this period of time, they seemed to be frozen in time. Their eyeballs didn't even move. Boom! Suddenly, a rumbling sound came from ahead, startling the two of them as if they had just awoken from a dream. The Life and Death Emperor sword and Soul Kunlun sword instinctively appeared in front of Zhou Xuanji, guarding against any enemy attacks. Zhou Xuanji reacted quickly and stored the faded fate pearl into the supreme storage. Little Sovereign glanced at the red domain in front of him. There were countless stars scattered all over. Most of them were very small, like meteorites, but there were living beings living in them. These creatures had powerful qi and blood, but they didn't have intelligence. They were muddle-headed and couldn't escape the gravitational pull of the stars. "It's fine. It's just space-time collapsing." Little Sovereign shook his head. Just as he was about to continue speaking, his expression froze. Zhou Xuanji frowned as well. He asked, "Have we been targeted?" The space in front of him fluctuated, and a pair of scarlet eyes opened. Its pupils were larger than all the stars here. A terrifying killing intent swept over them like a tidal wave, drowning them. Zhou Xuanji's robe fluttered in the wind. He activated the sword fusion technique and raised his aura to the maximum. Without waiting for the other party to appear, he raised his sword and slashed out. Ultimate Chaos Dao. Boundless sword chi tore through the universe and shattered the pair of scarlet eyes. Roar! A roar exploded, reversing time and space. Zhou Xuanji's soul trembled, and violet light shot out of his eyes, freezing this shattered spacetime. Not good. It was a jade-eyed Yama Tao Tai. He was Gu Tianlin's mount. It was an ancient demonic beast that once dominated an area of the boundless universe. Cried Little Sovereign. His fear made Zhou Xuanji feel a sense of danger. Zhou Xuanji charged straight into the spacetime turbulence and into the absolute time realm to avoid the green-eyed Yama-Tao-Tai. No matter how strong the jade-eyed Yama-Tao-Tai was, it wasn't strong enough to kill its way into absolute time. Zhou Xuanji asked, was that demonic beast a coincidence? How could he not think too much about encountering a rare ancient demonic beast? Little Sovereign hesitated and said, I don't think so. After all, this beast has a master. Its first master is Gu Juejiao, who is also Gu Tianlin's father. You should know who Gu Juejiao is. He is a legend in the endless universe. He is close to the cardinal heaven realm. Ancient prodigies. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted abruptly, and his heart was in great shock. Gu Juejiao was an existence that shook the long river of history of the Kunlun origin court. If a cardinal heaven expert was praised as the strongest, there would definitely be people who would refute it. Moreover, only Gu Juejiao could stand side by side with a cardinal heaven expert. Zhou Xuanji frowned and said, could it be that the ancient genius is here too? He has his eyes on me. When Jiang Feili attacked, many supreme sages gathered outside the Kunlun origin court, but most of the supreme sages didn't show up. Even little supreme sages couldn't recognize their voices. Little Sovereign was also worried about the problem that Zhou Xuanji mentioned. Gu Juejiao was an existence that Jiang Feili could not compare to. If even he wanted to target Zhou Xuanji, it wouldn't be good. They could feel the killing intent of the jade-eyed Yama-Tao-Tai. The two fell into silence. What should we do now? Is there another way to the Thunder Alliance? Zhou Xuanji asked. He didn't know how to go to the Thunder Alliance, but Little Sovereign knew. Little Sovereign furrowed his brow and said, let's avoid it for a while. That guy can't always wait for you outside. Zhou Xuanji agreed with him. He immediately took out the faded fate pearl and began to observe it. Little Sovereign's eyes were also fixed on it as he concentrated on it. Once again, the two seemed to have lost their souls. They didn't say a word. After an unknown period of time, Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses and looked at Little Sovereign. He saw that this guy's eyes were wide open like a ghost. Zhou Xuanji angrily said, wake up, shouldn't we set off? Zhou Xuanji's heart skipped a beat. He didn't notice it before. But when he saw Little Sovereign's expression, he inexplicably panicked. This is too terrifying. He suddenly felt that the faded fate pearl wasn't a supreme treasure but an evil object. Little Sovereign woke up from his trance and subconsciously replied, let's go. Wait. Don't worry. He furrowed his brow and began to think seriously. Zhou Xuanji's blood ran cold when he saw his reaction. The faded fate pearl could really make them lose their way. Even someone as strong as Little Sovereign would be the same. He immediately raised this question. The Thunder Alliance wasn't important right now. The key was how to deal with the faded fate pearl. Little Sovereign furrowed his brow after hearing this. His soul slightly trembled as he muttered, damn, it's okay if I didn't say it, but now. He also began to feel afraid. If the enemy attacked without anyone knowing and they were addicted to the faded fate pearl, wouldn't that be the end of them? The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. He looked at the faded fate pearl with fear in his eyes. Sure enough, there's no such thing as a perfect treasure in this world. The better it is, the more dangerous it is, he muttered to himself. His expression was full of vigilance. Zhou Xuanji squeezed hard, trying to crush the faded fate pearl. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't crush the faded fate pearl. Little Sovereign took a deep breath and said, it seems that we need to find Rainbow Qin Saint Lord. Only an existence like him can understand the mysteries of the faded fate pearl. Zhou Xuanji asked, if Rainbow Qin Saint Lord is also deceived, wouldn't it be a disaster? Little Sovereign glared at him and snorted, you can't imagine how powerful a Saint Lord is. If this pearl was really that terrifying, the Kunlun origin court would have long perished. Zhou Xuanji felt that it made sense. He then put away the fated fate pearl and prepared to leave the absolute time realm. Chapter 909. After leaving the absolute time realm carefully, Zhou Xuanji was not attacked by the jade-eyed Yamatoutai again. He took Little Sovereign and moved forward at full speed. In the future, he no longer took out the fated fortune pearl and regarded it as a taboo. Under the guidance of Little Sovereign, he passed through many planes and got closer and closer to the Thunder Alliance. Without the fated fate bead to attract their attention, Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign felt very uncomfortable at first. But after they got used to it, they felt relaxed. It's better now. I almost fell into their trap. Just thinking about it gives me some lingering fear. Little Sovereign sighed with emotion. It was he who instigated Zhou Xuanji to get the fated fortune pearl. Therefore, he felt ashamed about it. He secretly warned himself to never relax his vigilance. No wonder the fated fate pearl could stay there for so many years without being taken away. Its terror was not inferior to that of the blood bead black staff. Zhou Xuanji asked, "How far is the Thunder Alliance?" As a great supreme of the second court, he was already far stronger than before. Even at full speed, he still could not see the shadow of the Thunder Alliance. Soon. Little Sovereign said perfunctorily. The endless universe was vast. In the past, he had found the Thunder Alliance by accident. Zhou Xuanji frowned but did not ask further. 10 years later. Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign came to a strange universe full of space-time vortexes. These space-time vortexes varied in size. They were like eyes staring at them from all directions. This is close to the 10,000 domain demon lair. The 10,000 domain demon lair is huge, and there are many forces stationed around it. There are dozens of sacred grounds like the Thunder Alliance, but the Thunder Alliance is the most famous and has the longest history. Little Sovereign stared ahead and said leisurely. Without the jade-eyed Yamatoutai chasing after them, their journey was very easy. They didn't even encounter a Grand Supreme. Zhou Xuanji could already sense an aura that made him feel uneasy. It was similar to demonic might, but it was more profound and unfathomable than any demonic might he had ever seen. The Myriad Domain Demon Lair was a place where demons from billions of planes gathered. Countless demon bones were buried there. In the endless universe, the Myriad Domain Demon Lair was also known as the ancestral grave of the demon race. Little Sovereign began to tell him about the legend of the Myriad Domain Demon Lair. The birth of the Myriad Domain Demon Lair was extremely long ago. It could be traced back to the era of the primeval sovereigns. The primeval era was an incomparably resplendent era in the boundless universe. At that time, the primeval era dominated the boundless universe, and countless heroes emerged one after another, shocking the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. It was said that the current Grand Supremes would be cannon fodder in the primeval era. The primeval era was a legend that was passed down by all living beings in the boundless universe. Countless cultivators took this as their goal and advanced wave after wave, hoping to create a new golden age just like the primeval era. It was rumored that the Myriad Domain Demon Lair was once a battlefield. The ancient demon race challenged the ancient venerables, but they were all annihilated. Their resentment did not dissipate, and now it had become a fiendish domain. Even Grand Supremes would encounter misfortune if they entered its range. Listening to Little Sovereign's narration, Zhou Xuanji also became very interested in the Prime Sovereign era. By the way, legend has it that Gu Zun also loved using swords. His sword was said to be the strongest in history. Little Sovereign suddenly thought of something and said meaningfully. Zhou Xuanji was determined to become the only sword emperor in history. If Gu Zun was still alive, he would definitely challenge him. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, Ancient Sovereign, Sovereign Heaven, and Ancient Absolute Genius, who is the most powerful? Little Sovereign rolled his eyes at him and snappily said, Do you still need to ask? Can Cardinal Heaven and Ancient Peerless Geniuses create their own era? Zhou Xuanji immediately understood. It seemed that no one in the endless universe could compare to Gu Zun, at least on the surface. Could it be that Gu Zun had mastered a sovereign's opportunity? After all, legend had it that if one had a sovereign's opportunity, they could dominate the endless universe. All grand sovereigns would have to obey their orders. Another half a year passed. Zhou Xuanji finally came to the Thunder Alliance's territory. The Thunder Alliance was very big and was made up of dozens of universes. There were countless living beings here, and there were countless floating islands. There were also massive cities that were as majestic as the sun. There were no guards in the Thunder Alliance. Any creature could enter and exit freely. Even so, Zhou Xuanji didn't see any fighting scenes when he scanned with his divine will. It seemed that there was some kind of extremely powerful force restricting the creatures here. Zhou Xuanji quickly flew toward a giant city ahead. Little Sovereign was still floating behind Zhou Xuanji. He wasn't afraid of being discovered. In the endless universe, he wasn't a big shot. He wouldn't cause any disputes. I haven't been here for a long time. I really miss it. Many great sovereigns indulge in this place. You have to take it easy, Little Sovereign said with a faint smile. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow upon hearing Little Sovereign's words. Looking at his smile, he was probably talking about some brothels. Soon, Zhou Xuanji entered the city with Little Sovereign. After landing, he strolled forward while glancing at both sides of the street. Not all the creatures here were great sovereigns. But the weakest was at the Origin Fusion Divine Lord realm. There were all kinds of races. Even if they didn't speak the same language, their souls were powerful enough to understand each other. There were no stalls on both sides of the street. There were only overlapping pavilions selling all kinds of treasures. Zhou Xuanji felt the aura of hundreds of great sovereigns before he even took 10 steps. He sighed in his heart. Great sovereigns are really everywhere. A man in a blue robe quickly walked over from the front. He had 4 eyes but didn't look strange at all. On the contrary, he looked very handsome. He walked up to Zhou Xuanji and bowed. Senior, you must be the Sword Emperor, right? My Saint Lord sent me to meet you. Rainbow Qin Saint Lord. Zhou Xuanji was puzzled. Although Rainbow Qin Saint Lord had invited him before, he didn't expect Rainbow Qin Saint Lord to give him so much face. He even sent someone to pick him up immediately. Could it be that Rainbow Qin Saint Lord is plotting something? He couldn't help but be vigilant. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Please lead the way." The man in the blue robe shook his head with a smile before flying into the depths of the universe with Zhou Xuanji. After flying over one giant city after another, about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn had passed. Zhou Xuanji saw a giant golden tower standing in the clouds. It was surrounded by giant cities in all directions. It looked incomparably magnificent. At the top of the giant golden tower was a fire phoenix with a wingspan of hundreds of millions of feet. It looked like a sun hanging high above, overlooking all living beings in the universe. The man in the blue robe led Zhou Xuanji to the gate below the giant tower. He respectfully said, "You can go in directly. Follow the sound of the guqin. The Saint Lord is waiting for you at the end of the sound." Zhou Xuanji nodded before pushing the door and entering. The inside was resplendent with gold and jade. An endless path appeared before his eyes. The walls on both sides were engraved with different portraits. They seemed to be recording some historical events. They were emanating a boundless aura. These murals have extremely powerful artistic conception. If you can keep comprehending them, it will be of great help to your cultivation, Little Sovereign exclaimed. He was even more in awe of Rainbow Qin Saint Lord. Zhou Xuanji heard the sound of the guqin coming from the front. It was very weak, but it had a penetrating power that made his heart ripple. He immediately walked forward. As he walked forward, the sound of the guqin grew louder and louder. The atmosphere also changed. Chapter 9-10. The sound of the zither was chilling. With every step Zhou Xuanji took, he felt an additional sound of the zither. After 100 steps, he felt hundreds of zither players playing at the same time. The sound of the zither was giving off a mighty pressure that was constantly increasing. Zhou Xuanji immediately understood. Hong Qin Saint Lord wanted to test him. Little Sovereign curled his lips. His awe of Hong Qin Saint Lord had diminished. In his opinion, Hong Qin Saint Lord didn't need to do this given his status. After all, Hong Qin Saint Lord invited Zhou Xuanji to be a guest. But he still wanted to test him. Wasn't this bullying the weak and losing the demeanor of his ancestor? Zhou Xuanji didn't notice Little Sovereign's emotions. He began sprinting forward. He quickly came to the end of the corridor. In front of him was a golden spiral staircase. He looked up but couldn't see the top. He leaped up and quickly rushed to the top of the tower. In less than 2 breaths, he rushed into a corridor at the top of the tower. He looked ahead and saw Hong Qin Saint Lord at a glance. Hong Qin Saint Lord was sitting on a piece of red cloth, playing the zither. In front of him was a pool. The surface of the pool reflected the scenes of the cities of the Thunder Alliance. Zhou Xuanji walked up to the pool and bowed, saying, "Greetings, Saint Lord. Thank you for your help that day." Hong Qin Saint Lord looked up at him and said with a smile, "No need to thank me. After all, I used to be the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court." Zhou Xuanji nodded. He then began thinking about how to tell him about the Fated Pearl. He wanted Hong Qin Saint Lord to see what secrets were hidden in the Fated Pearl. Apart from dealing with the 9 absolutes of Qilin, the more important task is to stop the resurrection of Cardinal Heaven. Cardinal Heaven deliberately left this legend of opportunity to make everyone crazy. In fact, he wants to resurrect himself. With his ability, the 9 absolutes of Qilin can't control him at all, Hong Qin Saint Lord continued. Hong Qin Saint Monarch continued. His eyes were so deep that no one could tell what he was thinking. Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. He asked in surprise, "Why do you want to stop the resurrection of Cardinal Heaven?" Cardinal Heaven was also the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. He could be regarded as his ancestor. He was also a sovereign now. If there was no special reason, he wouldn't want to kill his ancestor for no reason. That's because Cardinal Heaven's ambition was too great. He wanted to surpass Guzun, but his methods were too iron-blooded and would bring disaster to all living beings. Back then, when he fell, he provoked countless enemies. I was one of them. Although we were dissatisfied with his tyranny, he had indeed contributed greatly to the boundless universe. So, we wiped away all of his dark history and only left behind his invincible legend. Hong Qin Saint Lord looked at Zhou Xuanji and said seriously, "In the endless universe, there were many fanatical believers of the Cardinal Heavens." He wanted to see through Zhou Xuanji. Would this guy be fanatical about Cardinal Heaven? Fortunately, the expression in Zhou Xuanji's eyes did not change too much, just a little. Hong Qin Saint Lord could understand. After all, a Cardinal Heaven expert was Zhou Xuanji's senior. Moreover, he had no obligation to bear this responsibility. "If you agree, I'll satisfy one of your requests." "Anything is fine." Hong Qin Saint Monarch smiled. His expression was amiable, no longer giving off that oppressive feeling. "Of course, you can also refuse. I'm not forcing you." Zhou Xuanji's eyes sparkled when he heard this. He was weighing the pros and cons doing so might offend a Cardinal Heaven expert. If he succeeded in suppressing a Cardinal Heaven expert, it would be fine. But if a Cardinal Heaven expert was resurrected, he would definitely become the #1 target for revenge. If he was stopped by a nameless junior, he would definitely explode in anger. Hong Qin Saint Lord stopping a Cardinal Heaven expert was understandable. After all, Hong Qin Saint Lord's reputation was ridiculously high. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and asked, "Why do you need me?" He needed an answer. Hong Qin Saint Monarch replied, "Because you're weak, you won't raise his guard. However, your strength surpasses your realm, and you'll be able to catch him off guard and deal him a fatal blow. I'll restrain him head-on with the other great experts." Zhou Xuanji raised his brow upon hearing this. Why is this opportunity so similar to Jiang Feili's plan? Is he that weak? Zhou Xuanji was a little speechless. He glanced at Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign's face turned solemn. He hesitated for a moment before nodding. Seeing this, Hong Qin Saint Lord smiled. He curiously asked, I still remember you. Back then, you were very similar to the Sword Emperor. But you were more high-spirited. If you really want to talk about who you are like, it's the Sovereign Heaven Path. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. The Sovereign Heaven Path. He glanced at Little Sovereign, only to see him smiling awkwardly. The Sovereign Heaven Path is overbearing. Could it be that Little Sovereign was also overbearing in the past? Didn't he love to cultivate geniuses without asking where they came from? Zhou Xuanji no longer thought about it. He looked at Hong Qin Saint Lord and said, I can promise you, but I have a treasure. I want you to help me identify it and help me comprehend this treasure. Hong Qin Saint Lord nodded. He even felt a little surprised. Everything he had learned was a great treasure. Couldn't it be compared to an artifact? Zhou Xuanji took out the faded pearl. Hong Qin Saint Lord glanced at it but didn't pay much attention to it. The next second, his eyes suddenly fell on the faded pearl. Zhou Xuanji waited quietly. Little Sovereign didn't interrupt either. After a long while, Hong Qin Saint Lord asked with a complicated expression, I didn't expect you to find this treasure. Obviously, he knew about the faded pearl. What is the origin of this pearl? How long has it existed? Asked Little Sovereign. Now, when he looked at the faded pearl again, his eyes were filled with fear. Hong Qin Saint Lord replied faintly, the origin of this pearl is extraordinary. It has existed since the birth of the Kunlun Origin Court. Some sages speculated that it created the Kunlun Origin Court. No matter how high one's cultivation is, they will be attracted to it and unable to extricate themselves. No matter how evil the power is, it will suppress it. Strange, how did you get this treasure? It didn't resist you? Zhou Xuanji shook his head and replied, it didn't resist when I grabbed it. Little Sovereign rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Hong Qin Saint Lord sighed and said, it seems that it has chosen you. I can't help you with this because it is an existence that even I can't see through. Change your request. Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. What is this? If even Hong Qin Saint Lord can't see through the faded pearl, who should I look for? The time is not right. One day, it will open up to you. All you need to do is wait. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't play with it if you have nothing to do, Hong Qin Saint Lord said meaningfully. Zhou Xuanji had no choice but to take back the faded pearl. Little Sovereign gave him a look and said telepathically, in that case, learn the Divine Rainbow Monarch Dao from him. Divine Rainbow Monarch Dao? What's that? Zhou Xuanji was confused but he still made this request honestly. Hong Qin Saint Lord burst into laughter and said, I have been waiting for you to say this. It seems that you are not knowledgeable enough. You need someone to guide you. Zhou Xuanji smiled awkwardly. He was even more interested in the Divine Rainbow Monarch Dao. In that case, you will stay here and learn the Divine Rainbow Monarch Dao. When you reach the first level, I will let you out. If you can't do it, don't think about leaving. Hong Qin Saint Lord's expression turned serious. Zhou Xuanji looked confident and not worried at all. Chapter 9-11. Sit down. Zhou Xuanji nodded and sat down as well. Little Sovereign looked curious as he waited for Hong Qin Holy Monarch to preach. Hong Qin Saint Monarch glanced at him and smiled, don't look at indecent things. Little Supreme Being felt as if he had been hit in the head and instantly returned to the Lesser Supreme Sword. Seeing this, Zhou Xuanji could only put the Lesser Supreme Sword into the Supreme Storage and wait for Hong Qin Saint Lord to preach. The Saint Rainbow Monarch Dao is a supreme sacred art that I created. It requires a firm heart. If one's will isn't firm, they won't be able to unleash the power of this Dao. He looked at Zhou Xuanji with an incredibly sharp gaze. He looked elegant and dignified, but he could always subconsciously give off a powerful aura that made Zhou Xuanji's scalp numb. Zhou Xuanji did not know if Hong Qin Saint Lord was doing this on purpose or if it was just an accident. Thereafter, Hongqin Sage Monarch started to explain the sacred rainbow Sage Monarch's way. Zhou Xuanji listened earnestly. Several years passed just like that. During this period of time, he and Hongqin Saint Monarch did not move from their positions at all. They only moved their mouths and eyes. By the pool. Hongqin Saint Lord looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked, "Do you understand?" Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and replied, "I roughly understand." He slowly stood up and prepared to find a quiet place to comprehend alone. "Just cultivate in front of me. There's no need to care about me." Hongqin Saint Monarch called out to him with a thought-provoking expression. Zhou Xuanji did not retort and sat down again, closing his eyes and cultivating. The Saint Rainbow Monarch Tao was a type of will sacred art. It could continuously temper one's will, allowing one's cultivation to erupt in a short period of time. This kind of explosion would not harm the physical body or soul, and was extremely powerful. It could even influence the will of others. Currently, Zhou Xuanji had only learned the first level of cultivation, and he began to comprehend it seriously. In his opinion, the Saint Rainbow Monarch Tao was the pinnacle of a sword master's dominance. He was extremely interested in this divine ability. If he used the sword Tao to establish the divine Rainbow Monarch Tao, then wouldn't he be able to make all the swords in the boundless universe respect him? What a bold idea! Even if he managed to cultivate the first level of the Saint Rainbow Monarch Tao, he wouldn't be able to do it. But he dared to dream. As he began to cultivate, his swordsmanship appeared, as if countless silver stars were circling around him. Rainbow Qin Saint Monarch smiled in satisfaction and thought to himself, "This kid's talent is indeed extraordinary." He actually directly understood the true essence of the Saint Rainbow Monarch Tao. He is truly an exceptional genius. At this moment, a ray of red light flew out from Zhou Xuanji's head. It was the fated pearl. The fated fate pearl covered Zhou Xuanji and red light shone on Hongqin Saint Lord's face. His eyes widened in shock. This pearl, how could it be? Hongqin Saint Monarch frowned and murmured. His gaze became complicated. He suddenly had expectations for Zhou Xuanji. How long would it take for this kid to master the Monarch Rainbow Tao? Inside a pavilion, Yang Di was drinking wine when a man in golden clothes appeared beside him. He knelt down on one knee and cupped his fists as he said, "Your Majesty, the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji has come to the Thunder Alliance, but he was taken away by the Saint's people." Sage. Sunlight Emperor narrowed his eyes and murmured, "It seems that the sage has chosen him." He sighed with mixed feelings. He sighed to himself. "Zhou Xuanji, oh Zhou Xuanji. Why are you able to encounter great opportunities wherever you go? Your Majesty, do you still need me to wait for him to appear?" The golden-robed man asked. Sunlight Emperor nodded and waved his hand, "Go. Remember, do not offend the Sage Tower. Otherwise, I will not be able to protect you." The golden-robed man left immediately. Sunlight Emperor continued to think. He flipped his right hand, and a golden dove appeared. It flapped its wings and flew out of the window. He then looked out of the window and said to himself, "Qilin 9 Absolutes. Even the sage wants to deal with you. It'll be hard for you not to die." The Thunder Alliance was vast. There was a world here, and there were undercurrents. The news about Hongqin Saint Monarch taking in a disciple spread quickly. Hongqin Saint Monarch was one of the most powerful cultivators in the Thunder Alliance. His sage tower attracted a lot of attention. That day, many people saw Zhou Xuanji enter the sage tower and did not come out again. If this wasn't taking in a disciple, what was? If Hongqin Saint Monarch wanted to harm Zhou Xuanji, he would not dare to lure Zhou Xuanji into the tower in front of everyone. Soon, all factions began to dig into Zhou Xuanji's background. A powerful cultivator divined that Zhou Xuanji came from the Kunlun Origin Court and was the current sovereign of the Origin Court. When this news came out, it completely shocked the Thunder Alliance. Hongqin Saint Monarch was once the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. This further proved that Zhou Xuanji was Hongqin Saint Monarch's disciple. Hongqin Saint Monarch never took in disciples. Zhou Xuanji would be the first. All the giant cities were talking about this. In one of the inns, people were drinking and talking about this. TSK, I didn't expect the Saint Monarch to take in a disciple. So, the legendary decisive battle is coming? That's right. Gu Tianlin's name has already shaken tens of thousands of domains. How can Zhou Xuanji fight him? Believe in the Saint Monarch. His eyes are definitely ruthless. But how long will this unprecedented decisive battle take place? Back then, when Gu Tianlin was rejected by the Saint Monarch, he swore that he would kill every disciple the Saint Monarch took in. Gu Tianlin seems to be coming to the Thunder Alliance soon. In a corner of the inn, a woman was shaking a jade cup alone. It was Shen Nianxing. Hearing the discussions around her, she said in amazement, "That guy really causes a commotion wherever he goes. I like it." She smiled and got up to leave. While the outside world was in chaos, Zhou Xuanji was still cultivating. He didn't know that he had become the focus of the Thunder Alliance. He didn't open his eyes. He was in a wonderful state. The sword's way was transforming. The sword's way, the sword that ruled everything. Not only the sword, but he wanted to rule everything. His will began to transform toward the divine Rainbow Monarch Tao. So fast. Hongqin Saint Lord said in amazement. His gaze fell on the faded pearl above Zhou Xuanji's head. The faded pearl gave off strands of red light that surrounded Zhou Xuanji like a river. It made him look so sacred and majestic. Hongqin Saint Lord fell into a daze as he looked at Zhou Xuanji. Another long period of time passed. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. The faded pearl quickly disappeared into his body, and the surrounding red light dissipated as well. He looked at Hongqin Saint Lord and asked, "Saint Lord, did I succeed?" Hongqin Saint Lord nodded and said calmly, "You have great serendipity. You succeeded." Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji was not surprised. He only smiled calmly. "What about the cultivation method after that?" he asked. He couldn't wait to continue cultivating the second and third levels. He was fascinated by the power of the divine Rainbow Monarch Tao. That's all. The divine Rainbow Monarch Tao has countless levels, but only one can be cultivated, Hongqin Saint Lord replied with a meaningful smile. Zhou Xuanji understood immediately. Hongqin Saint Lord was telling him that he should create his own divine Rainbow Monarch Tao. After you leave, you must be careful. There is a cause and effect. You have cultivated my divine Rainbow Monarch Tao, which is equivalent to half a disciple of mine. You must bear this karma, Hongqin Saint Lord said with narrowed eyes. Chapter 9:12. Bear the karma? Zhou Xuanji frowned and said with some dissatisfaction, "Saint, I didn't learn your Saint Rainbow Monarch way for nothing. I'm going to help you deal with Cardinal Heaven Saints, and yet you're saying this now. Aren't you digging a trap for me?" Hongqin Saint Monarch shook his head and said with a smile, "How can you say that? This is also your fortuitous encounter. After you leave, you can choose whether or not you want to accept this karma. If you refuse, the fortuitous encounter will leave. It's all up to you." Zhou Xuanji did not believe him. Just as he was about to continue speaking, Rainbow Qin Saint Lord waved his right hand and sent him out. Zhou Xuanji landed in front of the Saint Tower's gate with a deep frown. At this moment, he suddenly felt countless divine wills sweeping past him from all directions. He turned around and saw that this part of the universe was vast and boundless. In the distance, giant cities stood in great numbers, and countless living beings came and went. Everything looked so prosperous and harmonious, exactly the same as what he had seen before. However, at that time, he had not been the focus of so many divine wills. What happened? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow in confusion. Could this be the cause and effect that Hongqin Saint Monarch mentioned? He scanned his surroundings and flew toward a nearby city. As soon as he entered the city, he quickly found an inn to stay in. During this time, there were still many divine senses locked onto him. In the Thunder Alliance, there were many people whose cultivation surpassed his. He took out the Lesser Supreme Sword and asked Little Supreme Sword why it was like this. Wait. I suddenly remember. Little Sovereign's eyes widened as he exclaimed. Cold sweat began to overflow from his forehead. Seeing how nervous he was, Zhou Xuanji felt even more confused. It still related to that Gu Tianlin. When Gu Tianlin was young, he was peerlessly talented and considered himself to be extraordinary. He once wanted to become the disciple of the Holy Sage, but was rejected by the Holy Sage. Deeply humiliated, he swore an oath that if the Holy Sage dared to accept a disciple, he would kill the disciple. Before I died, one of the Holy Sage's disciples was brutally killed by Gu Tianlin. Moreover, it wasn't a sneak attack, but a challenge. He killed him in front of everyone. He believed in Zhou Xuanji's talent, but what kind of person was Gu Tianlin? Gu Tianlin had been cultivating longer than him. How could Zhou Xuanji fight against him? Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "The saint doesn't hate you? Or is it that Gu Tianlin is so powerful that even the great sage is afraid of him? Or could it be that Gu Tianlin's father, the peerless genius of the ancient times, was still alive?" Little Sovereign glared at him and disdainfully said, "This is an open and above-board battle. Life and death are up to fate. How can a highly respected expert like the sage take action?" Zhou Xuanji could not help but shake his head and said in a low voice, "You want to save face and suffer." Gu Tianlin was obviously targeting Hong Qin Great Sage. What was the point of talking about morality at this time? Don't worry about it too much. I reckon that the outside world has already regarded you as the Holy Sage's disciple. Gu Tianlin has his eyes on you and will definitely not let you off. Little Sovereign said with a dignified expression. Just the jade-eyed Yama Taotai alone was enough to make them tremble in fear, let alone Gu Tianlin. Zhou Xuanji sat in front of the table and poured wine for himself. "Since it's like this, let's wait for him to come," he said calmly. He already understood sacred monarch Hongqin's intentions. To him, Gu Tianlin was both a crisis and an opportunity. He had just arrived, and if he could defeat Gu Tianlin, he would truly be the disciple of the Hongqin sage. At the same time, his reputation would skyrocket. In the future, when he led the Kunlun Origin Court to the boundless universe, everyone would definitely give him face. At that time, the Kunlun Origin Court would completely soar. Thinking of this, Zhou Xuanji's eyes turned sharp. Little Sovereign understood what he was thinking and frantically said, "Brother, don't think too highly of yourself. You are not Gu Tianlin's opponent at all. Even Jiang Feili couldn't compare to Gu Tianlin's strength." "I know, but doesn't Gu Tianlin like to fight? In other words, the battle won't come too soon." "I can stall for time," Zhou Xuanji said, shaking his head with a smile. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and smiled. After learning the Holy Rainbow Monarch way, he really wanted to see how powerful he was. However, Gu Tianlin wasn't a good opponent for the time being. Right now, he just wanted to fight the Qilin 9 Absolutes as soon as possible. At the same time, he also wanted to know who made the Qilin 9 Absolutes issue the Universe Kill Order. That guy shouldn't even think about living. Little Sovereign began to ponder. After a while, the door was knocked. Zhou Xuanji said without looking back, "Come in." The door was pushed open, and Yang Di stepped in. He said with a smile, "Sword Emperor, you are really amazing. You have just arrived and you have already stirred up a storm in the Thunder Alliance. Now, everyone in the outside world is talking about you." He sat on the stool next to Zhou Xuanji and picked up the wine pot. He didn't treat Zhou Xuanji as an outsider at all. "Since you already know, you still dare to come to me. Aren't you afraid of offending Gu Tianlin?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a faint smile. He looked at Yang Di curiously. "Is the soul really in Yang Di's body?" Yang Di smiled confidently and said, "Gu Tianlin is looking for you, not me. He is proud and aloof. He cares about his face the most. How can he kill the innocent? Besides, Gu Tianlin also wants to deal with the Qilin 9 absolutes. Before that, he will not cause trouble for you. Zhou Xuanji was surprised. Gu Tianlin also wants to deal with the Qilin 9 absolutes? Previously, he guessed that Gu Tianlin had something to do with the Qilin 9 absolutes. That was why he sent the jade-eyed Yama Tao Tai to deal with him. This is what happened. Since the establishment of the Qilin 9 absolutes, they have issued the Universe Kill Order and accepted hunting missions everywhere. They have provoked countless enemies. One of Gu Tianlin's illegitimate descendants was also attacked by the Qilin 9 absolutes. This has become Gu Tianlin's biggest joke. As long as the Qilin 9 absolutes are not destroyed, it will be difficult for him to quell his anger. Zhou Xuanji shook his head after listening to Yang Di's explanation. Why are there still so many powerful cultivators who care about their face in the endless universe? The Qilin 9 absolutes didn't care about their reputation. That's why they have such momentum today. Why did you come to me? Zhou Xuanji asked, changing the topic. He couldn't wait to deal with the Qilin 9 absolutes. The corner of Yang Di's mouth rose as he said, "Get ready." The Qilin 9 absolutes have already rushed to the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. They are gathering their minions. They have already caused a lot of turmoil. Everyone thinks that they just want to kill their way in to find the sovereign's opportunity. Little do they know that their real goal is the sovereign heaven. Therefore, they didn't hide their actions. It is said that the martial dragon ape sovereign has been captured by them. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit as he gripped his wine glass tightly. Martial dragon ape sovereign? TSK, the Qilin 9 absolutes are already this strong? Little sovereign sighed. He had obviously heard of the martial dragon ape sovereign. Zhou Xuanji wasn't interested in the martial dragon ape sovereign. He asked, "When can we leave?" Yang Di replied, "We have to leave in half a year at the latest. This is also the reason why the saint released you." Half a year. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He didn't expect the Qilin 9 absolutes to move so quickly. He originally thought that the Qilin 9 absolutes would take some time to prepare. "Okay, you get ready first. I also need to find other helpers." Yang Di got up and left after saying this. Chapter 9:13. Half a year was very short in the endless universe. Zhou Xuanji did not cultivate but wandered around the Thunder Alliance. Occasionally, he would buy things that he was interested in. The common currency in the endless universe was the Supreme Crystal. Supreme Crystals were produced by Supreme Divine Power, and required special methods to refine them into pure energy crystals that could be used by other creatures to cultivate. In the Thunder Alliance, every single Supreme Crystal had to be inspected before it could be used to trade for treasures. Apart from that, one could also use treasures and divine abilities to exchange for Supreme Crystals. Zhou Xuanji's Supreme Storage had plenty of artifacts, natural treasures, and cultivation techniques. He did not need to consume his own sovereign divine power at all. On this day, Sunlight Emperor found Zhou Xuanji and prepared to bring him to the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. Zhou Xuanji hesitated and asked in his heart, "Should I contact the saint?" Little Sovereign replied, "Don't worry." How could he not know? That's right. Zhou Xuanji immediately felt relieved. Holding the Lesser Supreme Sword in his hand, he flew out of the Thunder Alliance's domain with Yang Di. Hundreds of figures were floating in the dark void in front of them. All of them were great sovereigns, and half of them were great sovereigns that he couldn't see through. "Sunlight Emperor, you are finally here," a Grand Supreme said with a smile. The other Grand Supreme also looked at Sunlight Emperor. Their gazes fell on Zhou Xuanji. In an instant, nearly half of the Grand Sovereign's faces changed. Sword Emperor. The disciple of Hong Qin Sage Monarch. Zhou Xuanji understood their expressions and felt a little helpless in his heart. Even though Hong Qin Saint Lord was highly respected and had unfathomable cultivation, Zhou Xuanji no longer wanted to take him as his teacher. He did not need a master. Even without the divine Rainbow Monarch Dao, he could still become stronger. After exchanging some pleasantries, the group continued moving forward. Zhou Xuanji received a lot of eager attention. He didn't put on airs in front of these great sovereigns and chatted happily with them. The Thunder Alliance was at the edge of the 10,000 domain demon lair. After flying for a short while, they could see the majestic scene of the 10,000 domain demon lair from afar. It was as if a huge black mouth was hanging in front of him, and its edges were suffused with red clouds. It was extremely bewitching. Myriad Domain Devil Nest, Supreme Being Graveyard. Since ancient times, how many heroes have died here? Sunlight Emperor sighed with a complicated look. But Zhou Xuanji saw a face flash across his eyes. It was extremely horrifying, but it disappeared in an instant. What should we do? Should we force our way through or hide? A girl asked. All the supreme beings gathered here had a blood feud with the Qilin 9 Absolutes. Her Dao companion had been killed by the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin, and her soul had even been refined into an elixir. At the mention of the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin, her gaze was incomparably vicious. Sunlight Emperor pondered and said, "Let's hide first. The 9 killers of Qilin have been loitering at the edge of the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. I'm afraid their target is not the supreme opportunity. Let's see the situation clearly before we make a move. This time, it's not just us who are dealing with the 9 killers of Qilin." He did not reveal the true purpose of the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin. If other people knew that a Cardinal Heaven expert could control it, there would be a huge uproar. After that, Sunlight Emperor took out a stone and put everyone in it. Then he held the stone and flew forward. Zhou Xuanji came to a dark space. He and the other great sovereigns landed on a floating island and waited quietly. Before the battle, everyone stopped chatting and adjusted their state, ready to fight at any time. Zhou Xuanji walked to an empty corner with the Lesser Supreme Sword in his hand. He leaned against a rock and asked in his heart, "Did you notice it just now? Well, that guy's soul is indeed still there. The soul fusion inheritance is just a cover. Looking at his face, I estimate that it won't be long before Sunlight Emperor's body will be seized. This process is irreversible unless Sunlight Emperor is killed." Little Supreme replied with a solemn tone. He was afraid of the soul in Sunlight Emperor's body. He can perfectly use the soul fusion inheritance and hide his soul. I'm afraid his origin is more terrifying than I thought. After dealing with the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin, you must stay away from Sunlight Emperor as soon as possible to avoid unnecessary trouble, Little Sovereign reminded. Little Sovereign, fearing that Zhou Xuanji would stir up trouble again. Zhou Xuanji snorted in his heart, "I'm not that bored. After dealing with the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin, I still have to face Gu Tianlin." Although he and Sunlight Emperor were old friends, they weren't so close that they would risk their lives for each other. This cooperation was only because the two had a common goal. But then again, what was the hatred between Sunlight Emperor and the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin? Did he really just want revenge? Zhou Xuanji was very doubtful about this. Every time Sunlight Emperor mentioned the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin, it was more playful than murderous. On the other side, Sunlight Emperor flew straight toward the 10,000 territories Devil Lair. His body radiated a dazzling golden light, like a sun, traversing the void. After flying for a long time, he finally saw the giant ship of the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin. From a distance, it looked like a giant beast crawling in the void. Ancient desolation of the Qilin, long time no see. Sunlight Emperor flew toward him and shouted in a loud voice. As soon as he finished speaking, streams of black saber chi swept over with great momentum, intending to cut him into ashes. The golden light on his body suddenly surged, counteracting all the black saber chi. He smiled contemptuously and said, "What? You 9 Absolutes of the Qilin are so afraid of me? If you don't let me finish, you will attack." Facing the 9 Absolutes of the Qilin, his eyes were sharp. His hands and his sleeves were clenched into fists. He was obviously very vigilant. "Who are you? We have met before, but I can't remember your name," Ancient Desolation's voice floated over. The Qilin Ancient Desolation's voice floated over, its tone hesitant. Sunlight Emperor wasn't worthy of his attention. In this regard, Sunlight Emperor wasn't angry. He smiled and said, "I know your plan. I can help you awaken the cardinal heaven." As soon as he said this, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Sunlight Emperor. It was the ancient desolation of the Qilin. He stretched out his hand, trying to grab Sunlight Emperor's neck. Sunlight Emperor's body flashed and turned into countless shadows, dodging his hand. The ancient desolation of the Qilin cried out in surprise. He couldn't believe his eyes. How could this guy dodge him? That is, the ancient desolation of the Qilin squinted his eyes. Seeing the face in Sunlight Emperor's eyes, he immediately thought of something and smiled weirdly. Looking down at the ancient desolation of the Qilin, Sunlight Emperor said, "I am from the Kunlun Origin Court. If you attack again, I will not help you. I will help others to awaken the cardinal heaven." His face was cold. He was trying his best to restrain the murderous intent in his heart. This guy is too presumptuous. He didn't take me seriously at all. The ancient desolation of the Qilin asked with a faint smile, "How can you help me?" Sunlight Emperor snorted coldly, "Zhang Feili has already told Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji about your plan. And in order to deal with Zhang Feili, Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji told all the sovereigns of the Kunlun Origin Court. Do you understand your situation now?" Having heard this, the ancient desolation of the Qilin's expression changed drastically. Although he was confident, he wasn't so confident that he was invincible. The thought of some powerful cultivators from the Kunlun Origin Court made him shudder. No wonder he had been feeling uneasy recently. "Then how do you want to help me?" the ancient desolation of the Qilin asked coldly, staring into Sunlight Emperor's eyes. Chapter 9:14. Sunlight Emperor transmitted his voice to Ancient Desolation. He was confident that Ancient Desolation would agree. Just as expected. Ancient Desolation's eyes flickered when he heard this. The atmosphere was silent. The surrounding void was frozen. In the distance, the 8 ultimate Qilin stood on the deck and looked at Sunlight Emperor with different expressions. After a while, Ancient Desolation looked up at Sunlight Emperor and said, "Okay, follow me." He turned around and flew toward the giant ship. Sunlight Emperor followed closely behind. And just like that, Sunlight Emperor entered the giant ship. He projected his vision into the world inside the stone so that everyone could see it. TSK, what did Sunlight Emperor say to Ancient Desolation? He dared to let us see it. It must be something important. Didn't he say to hide? Why did he go up himself? What did he say to make Ancient Desolation trust him? Ancient Desolation is famous for being suspicious. I think we still have to be careful of him. The great sovereigns discussed and became vigilant against Sunlight Emperor. Zhou Xuanji was also confused. What did Sunlight Emperor say to Ancient Desolation? Under the lead of Ancient Desolation, Sunlight Emperor boarded the ship. The two walked into a pavilion and began talking about the past in the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. They did not mention Sovereign Heaven and Sovereign Serendipity. It seemed that Ancient Desolation did not completely trust his subordinates. The two chatted for a while before Ancient Desolation left, leaving Sunlight Emperor to rest alone. Sunlight Emperor did not enter the stone space where Zhou Xuanji and the others were, nor did he take them out. Instead, he cultivated quietly. Time passed just like that. About 4 years had passed. Qilin 9 Absolutes began to move. The giant ship flew toward the darkness of the Myriad Domain Devil Lair and was soon swallowed by the darkness. Numerous black shadows appeared on the giant ship like ghosts. Qilin 9 Absolutes stood on the deck, side by side, looking ahead. "Big brother, do you feel it? Killing intent." The other Qilin 9 Absolutes looked solemn too. They had sensed the dangerous aura a few years ago. But they could not defeat Ancient Desolation. Moreover, it would be more dangerous if they left alone. The Qilin 9 Absolute's strength was uneven. Ancient Desolation was far more powerful than them. This was also the biggest reason why they relied on ancient desolation. For countless years, they had killed too many creatures and made countless enemies. Once they left ancient desolation, they would surely be killed. It's fine. Let's move forward, Qilin Gu Huang said with a calm expression. He did not panic in the slightest. His eyes were filled with passion. He couldn't wait to carry out his plan to revive a Cardinal Heaven expert. A majestic fog appeared in the darkness ahead. It was getting closer and closer like a sea of clouds. Take out the Opportunity Stone, the Qilin Ancient Desolation suddenly ordered. As his voice fell, countless Opportunity Stones flew out from the black shadows and floated above the giant ship. They were like billions of stars, emitting various colors of light, extremely resplendent. At the same time, the Grand Supremes in the stone space all stood up. Zhou Xuanji continued to meditate and looked up at Yang Di's vision. He asked in his heart, "Can you tell?" The Lesser Supreme Sword next to him trembled slightly, and Little Supreme Sword's voice entered his ears, "I can't see through him. His cultivation is still improving." 3 years ago, Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign noticed that Yang Di's cultivation was quietly improving. If not for the fact that Zhou Xuanji had learned the Saint Rainbow Lord Dao, he would not have noticed this. At the very least, the other Grand Sovereigns didn't notice it. This guy might have already used the power of the soul in his body. I just don't know if he is aware of the existence of the soul's consciousness, Little Sovereign sighed. Not only could he not see through Yang Di's cultivation, but he also couldn't see through this guy's intentions. The younger generation nowadays is really getting more and more extraordinary. Zhou Xuanji noticed that Yang Di had already gotten up and walked out of the pavilion. He then saw the vast sea of Opportunity Stones. He continued to ask in his heart, "Do you think he might have some other conspiracy?" Little Sovereign replied, "There must be. Be careful." The other Grand Sovereigns were also exhorting each other and exhorting each other. Not only do I have to be careful of the Qilin 9 Absolutes, but I also have to be careful of Yang Di. Zhou Xuanji was inwardly surprised. Aren't they afraid that Yang Di will hear them? Yang Di has never explained anything. Could it be that he tacitly agrees? Let him out. The Qilin Ancient Desolation's voice interrupted Zhou Xuanji's thoughts. A black hole appeared above the giant ship, and a ferocious dragon head poked out. He had the body of an ape with exaggerated muscles. The black hair on his body swayed like flames. Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. He was even bigger than the black ship. He spread his arms, shaking the surrounding clouds. "Break through," Qilin Ancient Desolation ordered. As his voice fell, Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign opened his bloody mouth. There was a loud bang. A blood-colored beam of light shot out from his mouth, directly shattering the dark space in front of him. The nearby spiritual chi poured into the hole in front of him as illusions emerged one after another. These illusions were all scenes of some powerful cultivators roaming the myriad domain devil lair. When they gathered together, it was like a blooming epiphyllum. It was extremely spectacular. "Go in." Qilin Ancient Desolation waved his right hand. Countless Opportunity Stones turned into a river and poured into the hole in the space. In an instant, the Opportunity Stones exploded one after another, turning into endless powder. The Qilin 9 Absolutes raised their hands in unison as a black flag appeared in their hands out of thin air. A blood-colored face was engraved on the flag. Only the outline could be seen, but the face couldn't be seen. "Universe Overlord, show yourself." Qilin Ancient Desolation furiously roared. His robe fluttered in the wind, looking extremely domineering. Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign flew out of the black hole and slammed into the hole in the space, stepping into the Opportunity Stone powder. All the Opportunity Stone powder attached to his body, turning him into a body of light. The 9 black flags burst out with a blood-colored radiance, intertwining with each other before condensing into a blood-colored net of light that spread toward Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. Those flashing illusions also drilled into Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's body. So that's how it is. Those are the memories of a Cardinal Heaven, Little Sovereign sighed. Little Sovereign sighed. He admired the ancient desolate Qilan's means. Zhou Xuanji was also seriously observing. He wanted to explore the mystery behind it. Qilan ancient desolation is really amazing. No matter how amazing he is, he still has to die. Who is the universe overlord? In all fairness, Qilan ancient desolation is indeed a peerless genius. No wonder he can develop the Qilan 9 absolutes to this point. What is he doing? Why does it feel like he is going to resurrect someone? The great sovereigns were in an uproar. Only now did they realize that something was wrong. Qilan 9 absolutes wasn't looking for a sovereign's opportunity but to resurrect an ancient powerful cultivator. Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's figure began to change. His roar shook the myriad domain devil lair. He was in extreme pain. Just at this moment, a faint sound of a zither resounded. It sounded like an illusion under the roar of Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. Qilan Ancient Desolation's expression changed drastically. He murmured, "You really came." He immediately signaled the Qilan 8 absolutes to prepare for battle. Chapter 9:15. Hong Qin Sage. Not only ancient Qilan, but the other 8 absolutes also guessed the other party's identity. Their faces instantly turned ugly. They had guessed that enemies would come to disturb them, but they didn't expect the first to be Hong Qin Sage. Given Hong Qin Sage's identity and status, if he made a move, it would definitely attract more enemies, and the danger would be unthinkable. Damn it! What feud do we have with him? Sage has made a move. Looks like someone is targeting us. Be careful, there are other murderous intents. Once our plan succeeds, we won't have to be afraid of sages. With Big Brother here, sages are nothing. Ancient Qilan regained his calm after listening to his subordinates' discussion. He was the leader of the 9 absolutes, so how could he panic? He glanced at Martial Dragon Ape. Martial Dragon Ape's form had changed completely. He looked like an ancient demon god. Within the light, he had 6 arms, looking extremely ferocious. Especially his eyes, which shone with a green light that even the Opportunity Stone could not cover. Cardinal Heaven. The overlord of the universe was reviving. His aura rose steadily and was terrifyingly strong. At this moment, waves of peerlessly powerful auras erupted from all directions, surrounding the giant ship. Prepare to fight. A burly Qilan absolute roared. The black figures on the ship took out their magic treasures and prepared to fight. The experts who had been hiding for a long time appeared one after another. There were hundreds of them, all emitting tyrannical auras, causing the dark space of the myriad domain devil lair to ripple. Hong Qin Sage's music stopped abruptly. Ancient Qilan. It's time for our battle to continue. Li Yingyo's domineering laughter resounded throughout the myriad domain devil lair. He, who was burning with flames, walked towards Ancient Qilan step by step. Ancient Qilan flipped his right hand, and a blood blade appeared in his hand. The back of the blade was dyed with black patterns, and the front of the handle was like a ferocious tiger's head. The tiger's eyes were inlaid with 2 purple crystals, emitting an ominous glint. A bunch of rascals dared to stop me. Today, I will kill you one by one like the overlord of the universe and bury you in the myriad domain devil lair forever. Ancient Qilan laughed. As his voice fell, his aura suddenly exploded. All the supreme experts' expressions changed. A blood-red light shone in the myriad domain demon lair, and a violent saber chi raged in the dark void. The Grand Supremes used their divine abilities to defend themselves. The other Qilan 8 absolutes also made their moves, and a great battle broke out. Inside the spatial hole, Martial Dragon Ape Venerable was still roaring, but his voice was changing. His aura began to strengthen at an extremely fast speed, startling some great supreme beings into turning around to attack him. However, they were stopped by the Qilan 8 absolutes. The black silhouettes on the giant ship also attacked. Their cultivations weren't weak either. They flew quickly, and their speed was so fast that the eyes of the Grand Supremes couldn't keep up. The battlefield became chaotic. Sunlight Emperor stood in front of the railing and looked at the battlefield. He first looked at Ancient Desolation, then at Martial Dragon Ape. His expression became strange, and his smile was extremely cold. "Cardinal Heaven, you belong to me." He mumbled and leaped into the air, heading towards the Martial Dragon Ape. He walked at a steady pace, perhaps waiting for an opportunity. The Chilean Ancient Desolate's performance was very tyrannical. If he were to easily approach, he would definitely be attacked by the Chilean Ancient Desolate. Inside the stone space, Zhou Xuanji and the others were still waiting. Most of the great sovereigns were extremely anxious. Why hasn't Sunlight Emperor let us out yet? Yeah. Now is the best time for us to join the battle. I told you, he has ulterior motives. Wait, did you notice? There's an array here. I can't even force my way out. What? We are trapped. Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but frown when he heard the cries of alarm around him. He used his divine will to touch the space and found that there was indeed some kind of power blocking them. What does this guy want? Zhou Xuanji frowned. He suddenly felt a little regretful. Why did I trust Sunlight Emperor so easily? Little Sovereign's voice resounded in his ears. It seems that this guy is also plotting a Cardinal Heaven. He trapped you here. Could it be that he wants to use you as nutrients for the Cardinal Heaven? Zhou Xuanji's frown deepened after hearing this. He can't be so perverted. He looked up and saw that Sunlight Emperor was paying attention to the battle between the Chilean Ancient Desolate. Li Yingyu was indeed powerful. The flames on his body made Sunlight Emperor's vision fluctuate. He and Ancient Desolation, Chilean, clashed wildly. All kinds of divine abilities emerged one after another. It was extremely spectacular. No one dared to approach within 100 miles. Ancient Desolation, frowning, said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect you to advance by leaps and bounds." Li Yingyu burst into laughter. His laughter was incomparably wild. With a fierce look in his eyes, he said with a cold smile, "Today, I will return the humiliation and the blood feud from back then." Boom! The flames on his body soared as he swung his fists. Countless fire dragons soared into the sky, crashed into the ground, or circled around. All of them madly rushed toward Ancient Desolation from all directions. The surrounding great sovereigns were all frightened. They had no choice but to pull away from the battlefield. Even Zhou Xuanji and the others inside the stone space could feel the scorching heat. The scorching heat that penetrated through time and space. Li Yingyu's fire Dao had reached an incredible level. However, even though he was so powerful, he couldn't suppress Ancient Desolation. With Li Yingyu as a foil, Zhou Xuanji could truly understand how powerful Ancient Desolation was. No matter how Li Yingyu attacked, the Ancient Desolate Chilean's aura continued to grow. Wisps of blood qi and black qi overflowed from the surface of his body, condensing into a terrifying giant demon above his head. 2 Chileans crawled on his shoulders, roaring endlessly. You want to take revenge with such little strength? Ancient Desolation laughed mockingly. He waved his right hand, and the giant demon above his head flew out like lightning. It swallowed all the fire dragons and took Li Yingyu away. Li Yingyu was swallowed by the giant demon and was being ravaged by a mysterious corrosive force. My supreme divine power. Li Yingyu's expression changed drastically. His supreme divine power was melting rapidly. If this continued, he would surely lose. On the other side, Sunlight Emperor suddenly sped up and charged toward Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. Stop! The Chilean demon flew over and kicked Sunlight Emperor. A gust of black wind swept across and sent Sunlight Emperor flying away. The next second, Sunlight Emperor appeared behind her out of thin air with a cold expression. Who do you think you are? Sunlight Emperor slammed his palm on the Chilean demon's back. The Chilean demon immediately exploded and turned into a puff of black smoke. Kill! 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 Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign roared suddenly. His tone was filled with anger. Everyone, including Sunlight Emperor, spat out blood and was sent flying by a terrible impact before they could even react. Ancient Desolation Qilin also withstood the impact. But he only swayed a little and was not injured. He turned around and said in excitement with a crazed look, "Universe Overlord. You are finally coming back to life." Chapter 9:16. The ancient Qilin's words echoed in the myriad domain devil lair for a long time. All the Grand Supreme's expressions changed when they heard this. Who was the overlord of the universe he was talking about? Humph. You want to revive a Cardinal Heaven expert? Dream on. Li Yingyu smiled contemptuously. His words were full of contempt. His words directly exposed the ancient Qilin's plan, causing an uproar among all the Grand Supremes. It turned out that the ancient Qilin's goal was not the cardinal opportunity. He actually wanted to revive a Cardinal Heaven expert. Was he crazy? The Grand Supremes were all frightened. Of course, some of them already knew the truth and immediately calmed down to fight. The ancient Qilin's expression changed drastically and he looked at Li Yingyu with hatred. You really want to die? The ancient Qilin said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the giant demon above his head rushed towards Li Yingyu. Li Yingyu was not afraid. Flames wrapped around his body and quickly condensed into a giant god of flames, which he punched. Boom! The two huge existences collided, like a primordial world crashing into a primordial world, destroying everything. Countless illusions appeared, dazzling everyone's eyes. The ancient Qilin rushed towards Li Yingyu. His killing intent had already condensed into a substance, and he vowed to kill Li Yingyu. The giant god of flames exploded. The ancient Qilin broke through the flames and stepped forward, squeezing the space and rushing towards Li Yingyu. Li Yingyu felt the danger and his expression changed drastically. Just as he was about to dodge, a palm fell on his chest one after another. The surface of his body cracked and blood splashed out uncontrollably. This power. How is it possible? Li Yingyu could not believe what he was feeling. He had fought with the ancient Qilin before, but it was not so terrifying at that time. After so many years, he had been improving, and so had the ancient Qilin. The ancient Qilin flashed behind Li Yingyu, and a black token flew out from his forehead. It burst out with black light and covered Li Yingyu. Li Yingyu, who was covered in blood, was instantly terrified. He struggled with all his might, but to no avail. Seeing that the ancient Qilin was about to kill Li Yingyu, the ancient Qilin suddenly caught a glimpse of Sunlight Emperor rushing towards the martial dragon ape Venerable. He immediately changed his target. When Sunlight Emperor saw that he was about to touch martial dragon ape Venerable, a horrifying power came from the side with a strong wind. It was unstoppable. He subconsciously turned his head to look. Smack! The Qilin Ancient Desolation sent him flying with a slap, then waved his sleeve and retracted his hand. He coldly snorted and said, "You want to fight with me with just this thing?" Sunlight Emperor was slapped so hard that his crown fell off. His hair was in a mess, and he was in a mess. Martial Dragon Ape Venerable's body began to shrink as the opportunity stone powder floating around him all entered his body. In less than 3 breaths of time, he had turned into a stone man with a silver-gray stone face. All the great supremes who were fighting stopped, and all the beings on the Qilin 9 Absolute side stopped as well. Qilin Emperor King Emperor Emperor, and Martial Qilin, about Emperor Emperor is Qilin Sacred Emperor is, Heaven, Qilin King is going to be revived. Qilin of King of Qilin, Qilin Emperor is Qilin Qilin. Q Qilin. Qilin Qilin of Qilin Qilin Qilin, Qilin about. Out. Qilin Qilin said. About Qilin. Emperor. The Grand Sovereigns began discussing. They were all terrified. There were countless legends about Cardinal Heaven in the universe. The longer one lived, the more one would understand the real Cardinal Heaven. The tyranny and brutality of a Cardinal Heaven expert was unparalleled in the long river of history. At this moment, Rainbow Chin Saint Zither sounded, which calmed all the Grand Sovereigns. Qilin Ancient Desolation, there are some powers you shouldn't touch. Rainbow Qin Saint's voice came. It was light and breezy, as though he was unaware of the danger and was not afraid of the cardinal heaven. The Qilin Ancient Wasteland was stunned, and said coldly, Hong Qin Holy Monarch, I never thought that you would bend down to personally deal with me. Very good, today I will see just how powerful the famous Holy Monarch is. Another giant demon appeared above his head. It had 4 arms, each holding a divine weapon. Activating its divine power, it produced a thunderous explosion that covered Rainbow Qin Saint's zither music. However, Rainbow Qin Saint's zither music suddenly became louder, intertwining with Qilin Ancient Desolation's divine power. The other creatures were mesmerized by it. Inside the stone space, Zhou Xuanji stood in the air, looking at Sunlight Emperor's vision. Holding the Life and Death Emperor sword and Lesser Supreme sword in his hands, he murmured with a sharp look in his eyes, Have you thought of a way? He and Little Sovereign were thinking about how to break out. Not only them, but the other Grand Sovereigns trapped here were also thinking the same. They could clearly see Sunlight Emperor's vision. This guy was charging at Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign like a moth flying into a flame again and again. Their hearts were pounding. It's crazy. No, this space is too stable. Only great sovereigns of the 5 courts can break it. Little Sovereign said, gnashing his teeth. Zhou Xuanji's heart sank to the bottom. At this moment, Sunlight Emperor took action again. Taking advantage of Qilin Ancient Desolation and Rainbow Qin Saint's confrontation, Sunlight Emperor quietly flew toward Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. Stop! Qilin Demonic Qilin shouted as she threw the flag in her hand. The flag turned into a sharp arrow and shot toward the back of Sunlight Emperor's head. Suddenly, Sunlight Emperor split into 2, dodged the flag, and landed beside Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. Both he and his clone raised their hands and pressed on Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's shoulder. Not far away, Ancient Desolation Qilin was still fighting against Rainbow Qin Saint Lord's music. He noticed Sunlight Emperor's action. Instead of getting angry, he revealed a strange smile. Sunlight Emperor turned to look at him and burst into laughter. Ancient Desolation Qilin. What did you say before? Did you see it? Cardinal Heaven has fallen into Emperor's hands. Next, Emperor will. Ping! The stone surface of Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign suddenly shattered as a golden arm stretched out. Its palm was like a knife, piercing Sunlight Emperor's throat. Sunlight Emperor's voice stopped abruptly. He looked at Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign in horror. The stone surface of Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's face shattered, revealing a golden eye that was bone-chilling. Cardinal Heaven. Sunlight Emperor was almost scared out of his wits. He said with difficulty, how can you be so fast? Seeing this scene, Ancient Desolation Qilin burst into crazy laughter. He raised his arms and laughed wildly, ha 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 ha. The Overlord of the Universe has been resurrected. No one can stop me. I will dominate everything. I will create a new era of unification. The other Grand Sovereigns were trembling with fear. Their eyes fell on Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's golden eye, and they all felt a chill in their hearts. At the same time, a golden crack appeared in the space of the stone, cutting across the void. Zhou Xuanji dashed out immediately, followed by the others. They passed through the space-time turbulence and came to the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. They turned around and saw the battlefield immediately. Sunlight Emperor's throat was pierced by Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's palm. He could not move at all. The scene was dead silent. All living beings looked at Sunlight Emperor and Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign nervously, waiting to see what would happen next. Chapter 9:17. Good fella, the Cardinal Heaven has begun to awaken. Little Sovereign's scream rang in Zhou Xuanji's ears. It was filled with disbelief and a trace of fear. He had lived countless years longer than Zhou Xuanji. In his era, he knew more about the legends of Cardinal Heaven. Once the Cardinal Heaven experts were revived, it would be a true catastrophe. Zhou Xuanji said in a low voice, since he's awake, why is there no movement? Sunlight Emperor didn't speak either. Are they communicating? Sunlight Emperor and Martial Dragon Ape fell into a strange silence. They looked at each other and showed the same cold smile. Ancient Wasteland also sensed that something was wrong. He frowned and looked at Sunlight Emperor and Martial Dragon Ape Venerable. Hong Qin's Sacred Lord's zither music was still ringing out. It was getting louder and louder, becoming the only sound in the 10,000 domain demon lair. Qilin 8 Absolutes flew to the side of Qilin Ancient Desolation and asked nervously. Big brother, what should we do? Can we still control the Cardinal Heaven? Why do I have a bad feeling about this? Could it be that they have some sort of connection? Why don't we retreat, big brother, kill him? Facing the anxiety and urging of his subordinates, the Qilin Ancient Wasteland remained calm. His eyes were fixed on the Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign, as if he wanted to see through him. More accurately, he wanted to see through the Cardinal Heaven. Remember, never underestimate the power you once looked up to. Hong Qin Great Lord's voice resounded throughout the myriad domain demon lair, causing the 9 absolutes of the Qilin to be visibly moved. Qilin Ancient Desolation seemed to have thought of something and cried out in shock, impossible. He suddenly flew toward the Cardinal Heaven. Sunlight Emperor suddenly raised his palm and slapped towards him. Hundreds of golden souls flew out from his palm, and all of them looked like Martial Dragon Ape. The Qilin Ancient Wasteland waved its hand, wanting to use its own supreme divine power to disperse these golden souls. In the end, it was directly stuck to by them and quickly pulled into the distance. At this time, wisps of blue air flowed out of Sunlight Emperor's eyes, which condensed into a hideous face. He stared at Martial Dragon Yuan Venerable and grinned. Cardinal Heaven, you really know how to scheme. The golden eyes of the Martial Dragon Ape stared at him without saying a word. His eyes were still cold. Hong Qin Saint suddenly appeared in front of Sunlight Emperor. His body was trembling and his face was filled with shock. How is that possible? You also, the Rainbow Qin's Sacred Lord said with a trembling voice, unable to maintain his calm expression. Sunlight Emperor glanced at him and said, long time no see, boy. I advise you to mind your own business. Martial Dragon Ape Venerable also glanced at Hong Qin's Sacred Monarch. Sacred Lord Hong Qin fell silent. All the creatures watching from afar were very confused. What does that mean? Saint Hong Qin knew Sunlight Emperor? Sunlight Emperor even called Hong Qin Saint a kid? All of this was too unreasonable. Wasn't Sunlight Emperor captured by Martial Dragon Yuanzun? No. More accurately speaking, he was captured by a Cardinal Heaven expert. Zhou Xuanji was also confused. He asked softly, what do you mean? The other soul in Sunlight Emperor's body has also awakened? Little Sovereign replied, yes. His tone became extremely complicated as he faintly said, that soul seems to know the great sage and the Cardinal Heaven expert. What exactly is their relationship? I keep feeling that something is wrong. Why don't you retreat? Retreat? Zhou Xuanji frowned and hesitated. It wasn't easy for them to get here, and they were going to leave just like that? But on second thought, no, I have no choice but to come here. The Cardinal Heaven had already awakened its consciousness. Looking at the Qilin Ancient Desolation, it had obviously lost control of the Cardinal Heaven. It was useless for him to stay. Are you sure? He asked again. I'm sure. Little Sovereign replied in a sonorous voice. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Xuanji turned around and left. Hunyuan Heaven, I didn't expect you to still be alive. Hong Qin's Sacred Lord's voice resounded. His tone was filled with anger. What? He is actually one of the post-ancient sovereign 3 heavens, Hunyuan Heaven. Run. Full speed. Little Sovereign cried in horror. Zhou Xuanji was taken aback. Although he was puzzled, he still fled at full speed. He left the myriad domain devil lair as fast as he could. The other great sovereigns noticed his escape. Some of them immediately followed suit. But most of them chose to stay. After all, they had Hong Qin's sacred lord to back them up. What does the post-ancient sovereign three heavens mean? Zhou Xuanji asked as he flew. Could it be that sovereign heaven is also one of them? After the primeval sovereign era, there were three supreme experts, namely Cardinal Heaven, Hunyuan Heaven, and Hongmeng Heaven. Their strength was extraordinary, and they were collectively known as the post-primeval sovereign three heavens. They were born at different times, and their original bodies were formed from the heavenly Tao of the various courts. When cultivated to the peak, they were invincible. When cultivated to the extreme, they were invincible, little sovereign explained nervously. The strength of the post-ancient sovereign three heavens is equal. Sovereign heaven has never been defeated, but they have never defeated Hunyuan Heaven or Hongmeng Heaven. After sovereign heaven fell, Hunyuan Heaven disappeared inexplicably. As for Hongmeng Heaven, its whereabouts have always been mysterious. It once fought with sovereign heaven and was equally matched. After that battle, it became one of the three heavens. Zhou Xuanji's heart pounded wildly. It turned out that the existence in Yang Di's body had such a great origin. No wonder it could hide its existence so perfectly that Yang Di didn't notice it. He asked Yang Di to revive sovereign heaven. What is it for? And that Hongmeng Heaven? What does it have to do with sovereign Wuzhou? Otherwise, why would sovereign Wuzhou name his opportunity as serendipity of the world? Could it be that he has seen Hongmeng Heaven? Many thoughts emerged in Zhou Xuanji's mind in an instant. This is big trouble. Hunyuan Heaven and Sovereign Heaven have joined hands. They are going to sweep the endless universe. Before I fell, I had never heard of an existence stronger than the post-ancient sovereign three heavens. Little Sovereign lamented. His tone was filled with despair. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and said, they shouldn't be friends. Otherwise, why would Sovereign Heaven attack Hunyuan Heaven? Could it be that Hunyuan Heaven wants the power of Sovereign Heaven? Hearing this, Little Sovereign cried out in surprise. He felt that it was possible. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying explosion came from behind him. Even though Zhou Xuanji was in the space-time turbulence, the explosion made him dizzy. He almost fainted. He looked back and saw that the space-time turbulence behind him had collapsed. Countless lightning bolts were wantonly twisting. Zhou Xuanji was horrified. What kind of power is this? It can even blast the space-time turbulence across such a long distance. Fortunately, I escaped quickly. Otherwise, would be dead for sure. After thinking about it, Zhou Xuanji directly entered the absolute time realm to take refuge. In the absolute time realm of nothingness, Little Sovereign flew out of the Little Supreme Sword. He sighed and said, Motherf *Ker, you're poisonous. Zhou Xuanji was depressed. What does it have to do with me? Why is the endless universe in chaos as soon as you come? It was the same in the Kunlun origin court. Little Sovereign cursed. He was a little flustered and exasperated. Zhou Xuanji was even more speechless. He spoke as if it was all his fault. Little Sovereign's tone suddenly changed as he said, now, only Hongmeng Heaven is left. 3 heavens have gathered. It will definitely be a golden age. Guess who Hongmeng Heaven will be and when will he appear? Chapter 9:18. Zhou Xuanji was attracted by the post-ancient sovereign 3 heavens mentioned by Little Sovereign. He even guessed that the serendipity of the supreme legendary sword system came from the Hongmeng Heavens. Will Guzun 3 heavens be able to find absolute time in the future? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. He was worried that Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven would come here. On second thought, he did not have any enmity with the 2 heavens. His strength was unlikely to enter the eyes of a Cardinal Heaven or Hunyuan Heaven expert. I'm not sure, because I don't know how strong they are. Little Sovereign shook his head. He felt very helpless. He didn't expect that Zhou Xuanji would come into contact with a power beyond his imagination so quickly. Zhou Xuanji sighed. He could only hide here for now. He sat down in the void and began to cultivate the holy Rainbow Monarch Tao. The Saint Rainbow Monarch Tao was the only cultivation path that could allow him to quickly improve. Even if he cultivated according to his own cultivation technique, it was still a long way off for him to break through to the great supreme of the three courts. No matter how monstrous his talent was, he still needed time. Just like that, time passed day by day. In the absolute time realm, there was no time. No matter how long Zhou Xuanji cultivated here, he could return to when he first entered. Witnessing the battle between Qilin Ancient Desolation and Li Yingyu gave him some insight. This time, he had stayed in the absolute time realm for several decades, and his strength had improved greatly. Only then did Zhou Xuanji prepare to leave. He chose to step out when half a year had passed in the outside world. Passing through the space-time turbulence, he arrived at the universe domain. As soon as he appeared, the pungent smell of blood wafted into his nose, causing him to frown. He turned around and scanned the area. His expression immediately changed. Countless corpses floated in the air, densely packed together. There were even more corpses than stars in the sky. They came in all shapes and sizes, and there were all sorts of races. As far as the eye could see, it was a ghastly sight. What happened? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. His heart was heavy. Little Sovereign looked over with a solemn expression and murmured, "It seems that Cardinal Heaven has been resurrected. Look carefully. There are quite a few corpses of grand sovereigns among them. The might of a sovereign has yet to dissipate completely." In front of a Cardinal Heaven expert, a grand sovereign was like a pig or a dog. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Where should I go next? Back to the Kunlun Origin Court?" He felt that there would be trouble if he returned to the Thunder Alliance. After all, the Thunder Alliance was near the Myriad Domain Demon Lair. Let's walk around. Anyway, it's better to stay away from the Myriad Domain Demon Lair. Little Sovereign muttered to himself. He was also a little confused right now. Once a Cardinal Heaven expert was revived, there would be no peace in the boundless universe. Zhou Xuanji nodded and immediately flew in another direction. About 2 hours after he had left, a figure drenched in blood flew over. His arms drooped and his head hung low. His messy long hair was tangled in blood. It was Sunlight Emperor. At this moment, Sunlight Emperor's eyes were white and lifeless, just like a walking corpse. "I can't die," he muttered to himself in a trembling voice as he staggered forward. Whoosh, an air-piercing sound came from behind, and a large white hand suddenly grabbed him, directly grabbing him and quickly disappearing into the darkness. After returning to the boundless universe, Zhou Xuanji flew at full speed. In the first half a month, no matter where he flew, there were corpses everywhere. It was as if someone had purposely placed the sea of corpses there. Even Zhou Xuanji would not leave any corpses behind, let alone stronger existences. A battle between great sovereigns was absolutely destructive to the point of turning bones into ashes and scattering souls. It's really a disaster. These creatures might have come from some court realm. No matter who killed them, it proves that this guy is extremely cruel and unforgivable. Little Sovereign sighed. He couldn't bear to look at those tragic scenes. Zhou Xuanji looked straight ahead and didn't answer him. They were already far away from the Myriad Domain Demon Lair and were getting closer and closer to the Kunlun Origin Court. If it's really impossible, I will go back. At least the Divine Rainbow Monarch Road is enough for me to cultivate for a while, Zhou Xuanji said hesitantly. He was really worried about the Kunlun Origin Court. If the Kunlun Origin Court was like these court realms, he would definitely go crazy. Don't panic, the Cardinal Heaven is from the Kunlun Origin Court. He won't destroy the Kunlun Origin Court. You should look for your own opportunities now. Quickly become stronger so that you can protect everything you want to protect. Little Sovereign said, shaking his head. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji began to adjust his emotions. He continued moving forward. After half a month, they came to a dilapidated floating island. This island wasn't big. There was a mountain range on it. A waterfall fell along the mountain stream. The scenery was very beautiful. Zhou Xuanji's divine will covered the entire floating island and whispered, "There is the aura of a creature here. It just left not long ago." Little Sovereign rubbed his chin as he scanned the surroundings and said, "It should be here. The familiar aura I felt before is still here." 3 days ago, he suddenly sensed a familiar aura, which made him very excited. So, Zhou Xuanji brought him here. However, they found nothing. "Let's wait," Zhou Xuanji said softly. Zhou Xuanji said softly. After that, he found a place to sit down. Although the island was dilapidated, its ecological environment was still maintained. A gentle breeze blew past, making it very refreshing. Little Sovereign floated around him and said in amazement, "Your divine Rainbow Monarch Road has become stronger again. Kid, you can still become stronger while traveling?" Zhou Xuanji replied, "I was just thinking about the spirit of Sovereign Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven. I didn't expect it to be helpful for the divine Rainbow Monarch Road." Little Sovereign only felt that it was incredible. He could also think about it. Why isn't it helpful for cultivation? Could it be that peerless talents are unimaginable? Little Sovereign couldn't figure it out. He was too lazy to think about it anymore. He drilled into the Lesser Supreme Sword to rest. After half a day, Zhou Xuanji felt an aura flying over. He immediately opened his eyes and called out to Little Sovereign. It was a child. He seemed to be only 5 or 6 years old. He looked like a porcelain doll. He had a white face and red lips. He was wearing a slightly large brocade robe. His hair was combed into 2 braids. He looked very cute. However, he was holding a head in his right hand. And it was the head of a woman. The woman's death was extremely tragic. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her face was covered in scars. She looked hideous and terrifying. The boy in the brocade robe entered the island with a smile. Just as he landed, Zhou Xuanji appeared in front of him. He was so scared that he immediately jumped back. "Who are you? Why did you come to my territory?" he asked in his childish voice, pretending to be calm. He couldn't see through Zhou Xuanji's cultivation. He understood that Zhou Xuanji was stronger than him. He immediately pulled the head in his hand behind his back and looked at Zhou Xuanji vigilantly. TSK, this kid is really cruel. Not only does he eat raw people, but he also eats souls, Little Sovereign joked. Little Sovereign said with a teasing smile, but his eyes flashed with surprise. He transmitted his voice to Zhou Xuanji, "This kid is not simple. Be careful, there is another aura on him. In other words, he has a backer. As long as we force him to take out that treasure, we can leave." Zhou Xuanji replied, "But you don't know what that treasure is. How can I force it out?" Little Sovereign furrowed his brow. He was thinking about what it was that made him feel so familiar. Chapter 9:19. Get out of here, or I will teach you a lesson. The brocade-robed boy shouted, waving his hand. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "You have a treasure that is fated with me. Take it out, and I will leave. Before I leave, I will give you a treasure in exchange. How about it?" Upon hearing this, the brocade-robed boy was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He stomped his feet and cursed, "So you want to rob my treasure? Do you really think I'm easy to bully?" He suddenly raised his head and let out a long howl. His howl was mournful and extremely penetrating. Zhou Xuanji arrived before him in a single step and pierced his chest with his sword. "You want to kill me as soon as we meet? Isn't that too much?" Zhou Xuanji asked in a cold voice, his eyes cold. This kid isn't a good person at first glance. At that moment, he felt a bone-chilling killing intent. Even if he left, this kid wouldn't let it go. The brocade-robed boy burst into tears and shouted, "Kill me if you have the ability. Otherwise, I will kill you." Although this kid was crying, he was still so arrogant. He was simply too arrogant. Zhou Xuanji's heart was filled with killing intent. He wanted to get rid of him to avoid future troubles. He took out the truth sword and poured his sovereign divine power into the blade before stabbing it into the brocade-robed boy's body. "Tell me, what's the most powerful treasure you have?" Zhou Xuanji asked in a cold voice. "Lustful golden dipper," the brocade-robed boy replied. As soon as he said this, his expression turned horrified. How could he answer truthfully? Could it be this sword? He looked at the truth sword in horror. His little body couldn't help but tremble. "Take out the lustful golden dipper, or I will make you wish you were dead," little sovereign grinned. At this moment, it was as if he was the bad guy. However, the woman's head in the brocade-robed boy's hand proved that he was the real evil one. Little sovereign transmitted his voice to Zhou Xuanji. "We must leave as soon as possible. I just found a space underground. It's full of heads. This kid is cultivating some kind of evil technique." Zhou Xuanji nodded and directly brought the brocade-robed boy into the absolute time realm. In the absolute time realm, he asked little sovereign to interrogate the brocade-robed boy. The boy's cultivation had been sealed by Zhou Xuanji. Next, he was at the mercy of little sovereign. In the absolute time realm, according to Zhou Xuanji's own calculations, 2 years had passed. The boy in the embroidered robe finally admitted defeat. He said weakly, "I'll give, the golden dipper of lustful light, I'll give." His eyes were bloodshot, and he seemed to be in great pain. "Where?" Little sovereign looked down at him and asked with a sneer. Little sovereign didn't show any mercy when dealing with this kid. Don't look down on him, he might even be older than the little sovereign. Some people like to maintain a youthful appearance. Zhou Tanhua was one of them, and so was this kid. The boy in embroidered robes opened his mouth and spat out a golden dipper. It only had 3 legs and was like a small cauldron. The surface of the cauldron was alternating between green and gray, and the 4 sides of the cauldron were engraved with sinister and terrifying patterns of evil spirits. This is it. The golden dipper of lustful desire was stained with mucus and looked extremely disgusting. Little sovereign looked at Zhou Xuanji and shouted, "Hey, brat, come and get it yourself." Zhou Xuanji waved his right hand, and the sovereign's divine power enveloped the lustful golden dipper. The divine power turned into water and cleansed the lustful golden dipper. When the treasure fell into his hands, it was already completely clean. What's so special about this treasure? Zhou Xuanji looked at the golden dipper of lustful desire and asked curiously. Little sovereign had specially asked him to come and look for it. Presumably, this treasure wasn't simple. Little sovereign flew over and said with a mischievous smile, "This treasure is amazing. It can seize anyone's 7 emotions and 6 desires. As long as someone is stored in it, no matter how strong they are, they won't be able to resist it." Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. It sounds very powerful. But if you want to store people in it, you need strength. What's the point of erasing emotions? Isn't its function too limited? Zhou Xuanji said with a frown. He suddenly felt that he had been played. I spent so much time just for this thing. I still have the World Fool Sword. It can lower IQ and make people lose control of their emotions. Isn't it the same? The 7 emotions and 6 desires include killing intent, but it's not permanent. I was suppressed by it in the past. Its peak achievement was subduing Gujuagio, a top expert under ancient sovereign 3 heavens. Little sovereign snorted. Little sovereign snorted, looking very excited. Erase the killing intent. Zhou Xuanji's heartbeat accelerated. He immediately felt that the treasure was shining. What a good treasure. He immediately stored the lustful golden dipper into the supreme storage. Next, he returned to the broken island with the lesser supreme sword in his right hand and the boy in a brocade robe in his left. He directly left the boy in a brocade robe and quickly fled. Wah! The boy in a brocade robe sat on the ground and burst into tears. He looked extremely wronged. He cried for half an hour. Suddenly, a shadow appeared behind him out of thin air. The shadow was like a flame. It kept swaying as it asked in a hoarse voice, "Who bullied you?" The boy in a brocade robe hurriedly got up and hugged him. crying, "Father! It's them!" As his voice fell, two figures emerged from his eyes. They were the faces of Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign. Zhou Xuanji stepped on the Soul Kunlun sword and flew on it. He was playing with the lustful golden dipper in his hand. The more he looked at it, the more he looked forward to it. Little Sovereign, floating behind him, angrily asked, "How long do you want to look at it? Don't tell me that you think it's the fated pearl." Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at him. He got angry at the mention of the fated pearl. Back then, if he hadn't noticed it in time, their minds would have been devoured by the fated fate pearl. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Let's think of a way to avoid it. I keep feeling that something is wrong. That brat's backer might be chasing after us. Little Sovereign sighed. Although he had obtained the lustful golden chalice, he had offended a mysterious and powerful existence. He couldn't help but worry about his gains and losses. Zhou Xuanji didn't think too much about it. Wasn't Little Sovereign asking him to look for opportunities? "I've finally found you." A familiar voice came into Zhou Xuanji's ears, and his expression changed immediately. Divine Star. He looked back and saw Shen Nianxing, who was wearing a red robe with golden threads, standing behind him. She was staring at him with a faint smile. Her eyes were cold, like a snake or scorpion. Zhou Xuanji asked vigilantly, "Why are you looking for me again?" As soon as he saw Shen Nianxing, he had a headache. "Why is this woman haunting me like a ghost? Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven have been resurrected, and you have the aura of primordial chaos on you. I need you to find primordial chaos heaven and achieve the unprecedented prosperity of the three heavens." She looked at Zhou Xuanji and nodded with satisfaction. This kid had grown up again. "I have the aura of primordial chaos heaven on me? What nonsense are you talking about? And, do you know where primordial chaos heaven is?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown, looking impatient. Shen Nianxing said with a smile, "Hunyuan Heaven and Cardinal Heaven still need time to recover their cultivation. If you don't grow up quickly, it will be difficult for you to survive in the future. If you find primordial chaos heaven, you might get a great opportunity. Since ancient times, primordial chaos heaven has never belonged to anyone." Chapter 920. Not a certain person? What do you mean? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. Little Sovereign also frowned. Obviously, this had touched the blind spot of his knowledge. Shen Nianxing smiled and said, "The post-ancient sovereign three heavens are the main body of the heavenly way. They stand out among the hundreds of millions of heavenly ways. Hunyuan Heaven and Cardinal Heaven have left many legends, but Hongmeng Heaven is the most mysterious. I've interacted with Hongmeng Heaven before. He once told me that there are 3,000 Hongmeng Heavens in the world, each with different attitudes and temperaments. Every time they appear, only one will appear." Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign glanced at each other. They were both very hesitant. They didn't know whether to trust Shen Nianxing or not. Shen Nianxing was no longer the Shen Nianxing they knew, but another person, a person that they could not see clearly at all. Until now, they still didn't know Shen Nianxing's true identity. "What, scared?" Shen Nianxing asked provocatively. Unfortunately, Zhou Xuanji still didn't listen to her and remained silent. Little Sovereign said, "Forget it. Let's meet again if fate wills it. Don't force it." As he spoke, he gave Zhou Xuanji a look. Zhou Xuanji understood and turned to leave. He immediately dove into the space-time turbulence and reached his fastest speed. However, as soon as he turned around, he saw Shen Nianxing following him with a smile. So fast. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart and could only stop. He couldn't get rid of Shen Nianxing. He might as well face it head-on. "What do I have to do to make you let me go?" Zhou Xuanji stared at her and said coldly. If he was forced into a corner, then he would fight. Shen Nianxing said, "I've said it before. Follow me to find Hongmeng Tian. This matter is beneficial to you. Think about it carefully. When have I ever cheated you? Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, your revered teacher wants to kill me, isn't that a trap? You got the opportunity stone and were rescued by me. You didn't get injured because of it. What kind of trap is this? Shen Nianxing snorted coldly, looking a little impatient. It was as though she was going to use brute force if Zhou Xuanji continued to be stubborn. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and activated the sword fusion technique. He stared at Shen Nianxing and said, what if I'm still unwilling? Shen Nianxing shook her head and smiled contemptuously. Without a word, Zhou Xuanji thrust his sword forward. Boom! An invisible force erupted and collided head-on with him, making him dizzy and tumble backwards. Without panicking, he instinctively used his teleportation ability to come behind Shen Nianxing and slashed with his sword. Before the sword touched the divine star, thousands of sword chi swept over from all directions. Shen Nianxing shook her shoulders and scattered all the sword chi. She turned and struck out with her palm, which was so fast that it surpassed Zhou Xuanji's understanding of speed. Zhou Xuanji's forehead was struck, and his consciousness instantly went blank. Shen Nianxing reached out and took him into her arms. Looking at Zhou Xuanji's unconscious face, she smiled. Stinking brat, you don't even want the opportunity one gave you. If it was someone else, I would have killed him with a slap long ago. Shen Nianxing snorted. As she spoke, she reached out and pinched Zhou Xuanji's cheek. Above the dazzling galaxy, two figures stood facing each other. Their bodies shone with light, one red and one gold. Their auras were swift and fierce, freezing this part of the universe. Hong Meng Tian disappeared after you died. It seems like the Hong Meng Tian you met back then no longer exists. The red figure spoke. His tone was full of regret. The golden figure snorted and said, Hong Meng Tian, I only recognize him. No one else is worthy of being Hong Meng Tian. If another Hong Meng Tian appears in front of me, I will destroy him. As his voice fell, the stars in the distance began to shatter like fireworks. It was very magnificent. We should go and see who reigns supreme in the endless universe today. The red figure changed the topic. The figure of red light changed the topic. His figure flickered as if he would vanish like a phantom at any time. The golden figure said, there is a very good junior called Ancient Juegio. He is qualified to chase after us. I wonder if he has survived until now. When Ancient Juegio was mentioned, he couldn't help but turn his head and look into the depths of the universe. Oh. Ancient Juegio? I have heard of him. Yang Di often hears about Ancient Juegio. He seems to be more famous than you, the red figure said with a smile, teasing the other party. The golden figure wasn't angered. Instead, he smiled and said, isn't that a good thing? He stepped toward the red figure. The red figure did the same. Boom! They turned into two beams of light and collided with each other. The galaxy of this universe was directly shattered as everything turned into nothingness. Zhou Xuanji felt a splitting headache. His consciousness slowly awakened from the chaos. He opened his eyes and found himself lying on a warm, soft bed. This bed was made of some kind of white jade. It was very magical. He immediately sat up and rubbed his head while looking around. This place was a bright palace. In the bright light above, there was a golden lotus upside down. The petals were layered, dazzling Zhou Xuanji's eyes. This place is, Zhou Xuanji muttered to himself in doubt. He felt that the sovereign divine power in his body was less than half. This made him very uncomfortable. He suddenly noticed that the lesser supreme sword was leaning against a huge stone pillar 100 feet away. Sensing his awakening, Little Sovereign's soul floated out. Little Sovereign helplessly said, Kid, we have been caught. Zhou Xuanji got up and waved his right hand. The lesser supreme sword immediately fell into his hand. He probed the outside with his divine will, but it was blocked by the palace. He couldn't sense the outside world. Where is Shen Nianxing? Zhou Xuanji, sitting on the edge of the bed, asked softly. Shen Nianxing's strength wasn't on the same level as his. Now that he had become a prisoner, it was too difficult to escape. In a short period of time, he could not think of a way to escape. He let out a long breath and lay back on the bed, letting himself relax. He was still a little dizzy after being hit by Shen Nianqing's palm. Little Sovereign flew to his side and sighed, "Do you really have the aura of Hongmeng Heaven? Could it be the controlling mysterious treasure?" He had always known about the supreme legendary sword system, but he only knew of its existence. He did not know its true form or its origins. "How would I know? If I hand that thing over, won't you be finished?" Zhou Xuanji said unpleasantly. He did not know how to give away the supreme legendary sword system. Even if he knew, he wouldn't do it. Hearing this, Little Sovereign couldn't help but be moved. He was also afraid of falling into the hands of others. "Forget it." Little Supreme Expert spread his hands and smiled bitterly. Then, he entered the Lesser Supreme Sword and no longer said a word. He was going to sleep. Maybe when he woke up, Zhou Xuanji would already be free. Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes as well. He wanted to have a good sleep. For some reason, he really wanted to sleep now. Ever since he started cultivating, he had forgotten when was the last time he took the initiative to sleep. His eyelids grew heavier and heavier. Just as he was about to fall asleep. Bang! A loud noise startled him. He immediately opened his eyes. He immediately sat up and saw Shen Nianqing walking over. She stared at Zhou Xuanji arrogantly and said with a smile, "What? Want to sleep? Don't sleep, I have chosen an opponent for you. If you can defeat him, you will become famous in the endless universe." Chapter 921. Didn't you want me to help you find Hongmeng Tian? Why do you want me to fight now? Zhou Xuanji asked with a dark face, unable to hold back his anger. Shen Nianqing walked up to him and said with a smile, "Yes, looking for Hongmeng Heaven. Fighting is also a way to find it. Your opponent is Gu Tianlin. It just so happens that you have formed a karma with him and need to end it." Gu Tianlin. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes. This person was indeed a threat to him. After all, in the Thunder Alliance, everyone thought that he was the disciple of the Rainbow Qin Lord. Gu Tianlin must have heard about it already. The battle between them was unavoidable, so he might as well take this opportunity to finish it off. "Can I deal with him with my current cultivation?" Zhou Xuanji said, pretending to hesitate. Shen Nianqing shook her head and smiled. With a wave of her right hand, opportunity stones fell from the sky and landed on the ground. Zhou Xuanji was stunned. Where did Shen Nianqing get so many opportunity stones? Shen Nianqing turned around and left, leaving behind a sentence, "You can cultivate here. When your cultivation is successful, you can challenge Gu Tianlin. Instead of waiting for others to come to you, it's better for you to go to him." Zhou Xuanji sighed softly and pulled the opportunity stone in front of him. Since he couldn't escape, he would cultivate in peace. Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Tanhua stood under the waterfall and looked up. At the top of the waterfall, there was a young man who looked only 12 or 13 years old. He looked very similar to him, as if he was his younger brother. The young man was dressed in white, and his handsome little face was filled with fear. He stammered, "I'm afraid." The waterfall was at least 300 meters tall, and below it was a huge lake. Mist filled the air, and when one looked down from the top, it was easy to feel fear. Zhou Tanhua smiled and said, "It's all right, I have to give it a try." His voice reverberated through the sea of clouds, making the white-robed youth even more nervous. At this time, a woman appeared behind Zhou Tanhua. This woman was devastatingly beautiful. Dressed in a green dress, she was like a goddess that had descended to the mortal world. Her temperament was otherworldly. She reached out to touch Zhou Tanhua's waist and whispered, "What are you doing?" Zhou Tanhua's expression suddenly froze. He said awkwardly, "I'm just trying to boost his courage." The green-dressed woman harumphed coldly with a displeased look on her face. "How old is he? Is there a father like you?" She was very dissatisfied. Zhou Tanhua curled his lips and said, when my father was your age, he was already famous all over the world. The green-dressed woman rolled her eyes at him. My child is already so big. When will you take me to see your parents? The woman in the green dress changed the topic. She often heard Zhou Tanhua mention her father, and every time he mentioned it, his face would reveal a look of worship. Zhou Tanhua smiled and said, my mother is busy cultivating, and my father is not here. I will take you to meet them when they gather. His eyes were very gentle as he looked at the woman in the green dress. Hearing this, the lady in the green dress curled her lips. This was the same reason every time. She sighed and said, my father sent me a letter asking when you can officially marry me. I don't even dare to tell him that I have already given birth to a child for you. My father is the sect leader of a state. If he found out that I bore a child for you before you even married me, he would definitely fly into a rage. He might even kill you. She sighed, which made Zhou Tanhua shake his head and laugh. He said leisurely, the boundless universe is very big, but it is also very small. Just as the woman in the green dress was about to speak, the young man in white suddenly jumped down from the top of the waterfall. Ah! He cried out in panic. The woman in the green dress was so scared that she was about to fly over to catch him. Zhou Tanhua suddenly pulled her back and said calmly, don't worry. At this time, the eyes of the young man in white suddenly burst out with purple light. Two terrifying forces broke out, and a dazzling purple beam of light slammed into the surface of the lake, causing water to splash. His whole body stabilized in the air. The woman in the green dress was dumbfounded and doubted what she was seeing. Zhou Tanhua, on the other hand, smiled faintly and meaningfully. Supreme Palace. Jiang Shui was sitting on a jade throne with a light mirror floating in front of her. The mirror reflected Zhou Tanhua's family of 3. She held her cheek with her right hand and said with a loving smile, this kid is really like his father. Even his attitude towards children is like his father. At this time, Xian Xianghua flew in. She quickly came to Jiang Shui and said with a frown, you also saw it. Tanhua actually has a child. This kid has grown up. He even hid such a big thing from us. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. She couldn't wait to grab Zhou Tanhua and slap him. With our cultivation, how could we not know? It's just that you were too busy cultivating. He didn't deliberately hide it. Before, he wanted to go to the lower realm to train and experience the tempering of the mortal world. In the end, he met his own love, Jiang Shui said, shaking her head. She liked Zhou Tanhua very much. She always spoke up for him. Not only was Zhou Tanhua very similar to Zhou Xuanji, but also because Zhou Tanhua's calm and introverted nature easily touched her maternal love. Xian Xianghua's frown still hadn't loosened. She said with dissatisfaction, I still feel unhappy. No, I have to go see his son. Having said this, she left in a hurry. Jiang Shui found it funny. She really has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Xian Xianghua must be worried about her grandson. Inside the bright palace, Zhou Xuanji was sitting on a pile of opportunity stones, absorbing the energy of the stones under him. Strands of colorful qi poured into his body like a stream of air. He was working hard to break through to the great sovereign of the 3 courts. After experiencing so much, the great sovereign of the 3 courts was still far away from him. He even felt that there was no qualitative change. He opened his eyes, summoned little sovereign, and told him his confusion. Yes, you need a more profound cultivation technique. The divine rainbow monarch Dao is just a divine ability. It's not enough to push him to a higher level, little sovereign said after pondering for a while. Zhou Xuanji glared at him and said, why didn't you say so earlier? Little sovereign angrily replied, how would I know if you didn't tell me? Everyone's cultivation state and limit are different, okay? Go call Shen Nianxing in and ask her to find a way. She needs your help now. Zhou Xuanji nodded and immediately called Shen Nianxing's name. After a while, Shen Nianqing appeared in front of him and asked, "What's the matter?" She sized up Zhou Xuanji with a slight frown. "This guy's cultivation progress isn't as fast as I thought." "What's going on? Wasn't he very fast before?" "I need a more profound cultivation technique," Zhou Xuanji said, getting straight to the point. Shen Nianqing suddenly came to a realization. She asked in surprise, "Didn't Saint Rainbow Qin teach you any cultivation technique?" Zhou Xuanji shook his head. "Then come with me, let's go find someone," Shen Nianqing said, turning around. She then took a step forward. Suddenly, a circle of light appeared 100 feet away. It quickly expanded and turned into a space-time gate. Zhou Xuanji didn't hesitate to keep up with her. "This kid's aptitude is excellent. Don't find a half-baked expert to teach him cultivation techniques," little sovereign teased. Shen Nianqing waved her hand, indicating that she understood. Chapter 922. After leaving the palace, a huge forest greeted Zhou Xuanji's eyes. The trees were so tall that they pierced the clouds. The diameter of the trunks was also very exaggerated. Majestic spiritual qi filled this world. The sky was sea blue. The world was vast. There was even the sound of roosters crowing in the distance. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked, "Is this the voice of Golden Crown Divine Lord?" Shen Nianqing raised the corner of her mouth and replied with a smile, "Yes. Isn't Golden Crown Divine Lord in the Kunlun Origin Court? When did she catch him?" Zhou Xuanji was puzzled. He scanned with his divine sense and found that apart from Golden Crown Divine Lord, there was also the aura of other great sovereigns. Those great sovereigns only had their souls left, wandering everywhere. Could it be that the great sovereigns that Shen Nianqing hunted hadn't all died? Zhou Xuanji pondered. He was curious about what Shen Nianqing wanted to do. Little Sovereign sent him a voice transmission, "Be careful. Maybe those guys will end up like you. She will raise them here." Zhou Xuanji didn't comment. It wasn't a matter of him being careless. His situation depended on Shen Nianqing. Shen Nianqing waved her right hand and wrapped Zhou Xuanji with divine energy. Zhou Xuanji's vision instantly came to the turbulence of time and space. Shen Nianqing was standing in front of him, her red robe fluttering. Looking at her profile, Zhou Xuanji asked, "Can you tell me who you are?" Shen Nianqing wanted to gather the post-ancient sovereign three heavens. She said that she wanted to create a brand new era. What was her purpose? "You can't say it. You will die if you say it," Shen Nianqing pursed her lips into a smile. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He was wondering if Shen Nianqing was bluffing him or if she really couldn't say it. Just like the blood bead black staff, he couldn't say its name. After a few hours, Shen Nianqing took Zhou Xuanji away from the turbulence of time and space. There was a red sky and a sea of clouds. It was magnificent and boundless. At a glance, Zhou Xuanji caught a glimpse of the huge temple in the distance. It was surrounded by red clouds like a mirage, mysterious and solemn. He felt a vast aura. He felt as if he was facing Hong Qin Saint Monarch. It was even thicker than Hong Qin Saint Monarch. "Son, don't talk too much. You don't need to hide anything. Answer any question truthfully," Shen Nianqing warned. Zhou Xuanji didn't answer. He was looking forward to what would happen next. The two quickly flew into the temple and landed on the stone steps. There were walls in front of him, and he could reach the end by following a small path. Zhou Xuanji saw a stone statue. It had 2 heads and 8 arms, and its muscles were exaggerated. It maintained a mighty demon-slaying posture, and its eyes were extremely lifelike. Little Supreme Venerable emerged from the sword and said in surprise, "Could it be the legendary ancestral Buddha?" Zhou Xuanji and Shen Nianqing looked at him in surprise. "How do you know?" Shen Nianqing frowned and asked. An existence like the ancestral Buddha wasn't something that a little supreme could come into contact with. Little Sovereign sighed and said, "I heard about it by chance and made a random guess. I didn't expect it to be right. I thought ancestral Buddha was just a legend, but it turns out he really exists. Shen Nianqing smiled and didn't ask further. When they arrived at the gate of the temple, Shen Nianqing said, Buddha, did you hear that? Open the door quickly. Her tone was carefree and impolite. It was obvious that she was very familiar with the ancestral Buddha. There was a loud bang. The gate opened. Zhou Xuanji took a closer look and saw that the temple was dim. A ray of light sprinkled down, covering an old monk. The old monk's body was golden. His face was full of vicissitudes of life. His mouth was covered with a white beard. His body was slightly thin, and his kasaya looked loose. He slowly opened his eyes. Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign subconsciously closed their eyes because of the brilliance in his eyes. What's the matter? The ancestral Buddha asked indifferently. His eyes fell on Zhou Xuanji, and his pupils suddenly widened. Zhou Xuanji's heart beat wildly under his gaze, but he didn't look away. He pretended to be calm and looked at the ancestral Buddha. Shen Nianqing smiled and said, I think you already understand, right? The ancestral Buddha examined Zhou Xuanji and said, take a step forward. Zhou Xuanji took a step forward, calm and composed. Very good. You should be a peerless genius of the Kunlun origin court. You also have the sovereign's luck. Your soul is still very young and has unlimited potential. Come in, the ancestral Buddha said with an expressionless face. Zhou Xuanji hesitated for a moment before walking into the temple. Shen Nianqing smiled, feeling a little proud. Little Sovereign got into the lesser supreme sword, and Zhou Xuanji threw the sword into the supreme warehouse. After Zhou Xuanji stepped into the temple, the door closed. The surroundings became dark. Only the light from the ancestral Buddha could be seen. He bowed to the ancestral Buddha, waiting for the ancestral Buddha to speak. The ancestral Buddha asked, do you want to learn cultivation? Zhou Xuanji nodded. What kind of cultivation do you like? The ancestral Buddha asked. Overbearing, decisive, and courageous, Zhou Xuanji replied without hesitation. Along the way, he had always been fighting above his level. He liked the overbearing and powerful path of cultivation. The ancestral Buddha's expression changed slightly. He asked, what do you think of sovereign heaven? Zhou Xuanji immediately understood what he meant. My understanding is very superficial. I don't like it, but I don't hate it either, Zhou Xuanji answered truthfully. Sovereign heaven was powerful and cruel. He flourished in strength, but was overshadowed by cruelty. Sit down, the ancestral Buddha said softly. As soon as his voice fell, a praying mat appeared in front of him. Zhou Xuanji sat down, waiting for the ancestral Buddha's next question. The ancestral Buddha spoke again. Zhou Xuanji couldn't understand what he was saying. It was an unknown language. Even Zhou Xuanji's divine will couldn't figure out the meaning of his words. The ancestral Buddha was preaching. Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. He couldn't understand this language. How could he understand? The next second, he suddenly felt that the ancestral Buddha's voice was very mysterious. It was filled with a strange magic. Soon, he was immersed in it. He didn't circulate his cultivation technique but just listened attentively. Somehow, he could feel that the ancestral Buddha was teaching him something. He slowly closed his eyes. The ancestral Buddha's voice began to impact his heart and soul. Outside the temple, Shen Nianqing raised her brow and murmured, this old guy is using his own ancestral voice. It seems that he has taken a fancy to Zhou Xuanji at first glance. Her eyes flickered as her expression became complicated. Is he really the next Hong Meng Heaven? In the bamboo forest, Xian Xianghua was meditating on a huge rock. She was surrounded by clouds and mist, and her robes fluttered slightly. A young man in white suddenly jogged over. He knelt in front of the boulder and said excitedly, Fairy, I've found you again. Can you teach me your cultivation method? This young man in white was called Zhou Tianyuan, and he was Zhou Tanhua's son. A month ago, he met Xian Xianghua by chance. Xian Xianghua had shown him how powerful she was, shocking him. In his eyes, she was even more powerful than his father. In order to prove himself to his father, he wanted to become Xian Xianghua's disciple. However, Xian Xianghua said that he was not sincere enough to move her. Just like that, day after day, Zhou Tianyuan came to pay his respects to Xian Xianghua. Seeing her grandson's excitement, Xian Xianghua remained expressionless, but she was laughing maniacally in her heart. For some reason, she suddenly thought back to when she had faced Zhou Xuanji in his youth. It felt great. Chapter 923. Alright, I'll teach you the method of cultivation, but you can't tell anyone. Do you understand? No one in this world is worthy of knowing of my existence. Xian Xianghua said coldly, causing Zhou Tianyuan's emotions to surge. No one in this world is worthy of knowing Fairy's name. Just who was Fairy Nun? After that, Xian Xianghua taught Zhou Tianyuan the celestial devil rebirth technique. Zhou Tianyuan had yet to impart his cultivation technique to his son, so Zhou Tianyuan felt that it was broad and profound. It was as if he had stepped into a whole new world. The other side. On the summit of the mountain. Zhou Tianyuan closed his eyes and cultivated. The corners of his mouth rose slightly. His cultivation was not weaker than Xian Xianghua's, so he had long noticed his mother's arrival, but he pretended not to know. TSK, in the future, will Tianyuan become the male lead in his father's story and realize that his family members are all very powerful? Will he meet an expert or even his own master? Will he have a lot of adventures? Zhou Tianyuan jokingly thought. He smiled and then concentrated on his cultivation. This year was a lucky one for Zhou Tianyuan. After becoming Xian Xianghua's disciple, Jiang Shui also came to visit him and taught him a divine ability. Zhou Shaoxian, Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian and the others all came to teach him, which made him feel flattered. He thought that he had met a group of immortals. As a teenager, he couldn't hide his thoughts and was very happy every day. His mother noticed this and asked him about it. He hid these things from her, which made his mother very confused. One day, Zhou Tianyuan's mother followed him and discovered that he was cultivating with Xian Xianghua. From afar, Xian Xianghua's figure was breathtaking. She didn't expose herself and told Zhou Tianyuan about it when she returned. Zhou Tianyuan said casually, "Everyone has their own opportunities. Let's leave it to fate." His wife frowned at his words. Ever since she started following Zhou Tianyuan, she had discovered that this guy was so calm and indifferent to the affairs of the world. To put it nicely, nothing could move him. But to put it bluntly, he was somewhat indifferent. She sighed heavily. She also needed Zhou Tianyuan's concern. She also needed him to accompany her to see her family, but Zhou Tianyuan had always been perfunctory. But there was nothing she could do. She liked this man. Although he had the appearance of a young man, he had descended from the sky when she was in danger. That scene was still unforgettable. Zhou Xuanji still did not know that he had a grandson. He was immersed in the ancestral Buddha's sermon in the temple. He forgot the time and forgot that Shen Nianxing was still waiting outside. The ancestor Buddha preached as he observed Zhou Xuanji's expression. He nodded in satisfaction and suddenly asked, "What did you comprehend?" Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji woke up from his state of enlightenment. He opened his eyes and replied, "No." "Oh. You didn't comprehend anything?" The ancestor Buddha raised his brows and asked. Zhou Xuanji nodded. He indeed did not comprehend anything but enjoyed it. "Then let's continue." The ancestor Buddha said faintly before continuing to speak in that mysterious language. Zhou Xuanji was astonished and seemed to have understood something. Then, he immersed himself in listening to the Tao. After an unknown period of time, the ancestor Buddha stopped again and asked calmly, "What did you experience?" Zhou Xuanji still shook his head. The ancestor Buddha continued preaching. Just like that, he spoke and stopped, and Zhou Xuanji did not comprehend any cultivation method. Zhou Xuanji was immersed in the Tao voice and did not think about cultivation. He really liked this feeling of enlightenment. His mind was empty, and his soul was in a state of confusion. This feeling was like the feeling when a child was conceived in the womb. On this day, Ancestral Buddha opened his eyes and said, "All right, that's it." Boom! The door suddenly opened and light shone in. Zhou Xuanji got up and bowed before walking out. Shen Nianqing was meditating under the tree. When she saw him coming out, she couldn't help but open her eyes. When he walked out of the temple, the gate closed. Zhou Xuanji walked up to Shen Nianqing. He was still thinking about the previous preaching. "How is it? Did you get anything?" Shen Nianqing asked expectantly. Zhou Xuanji shook his head. Shen Nianqing frowned and said angrily, "You've been listening to the ancestral voice for so long, but you haven't comprehended anything? Are you kidding me? This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If this matter were to spread to the boundless universe, how many great figures would be envious and jealous?" Zhou Xuanji ignored her and began to speak Tao in Ancestor Buddha's language. He did not understand what this language represented, but after listening to it for so long, he could roughly remember it. Shen Nianqing was stunned. Her beautiful eyes widened in shock. She stood up shakily and grabbed Zhou Xuanji's arms, saying excitedly, "You learned ancestral voice?" Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses and asked, "Ancestral voice? Is this the language of the ancestral Buddha's sermon? I don't understand what it means, so I can only learn to speak it." Shen Nianqing slapped Zhou Xuanji's arm, almost breaking it. "Amazing, you have actually learned ancestral voice. No matter what it means, as long as you can say it." She was so excited that she couldn't keep calm. She kept shaking Zhou Xuanji. Her eyes were full of splendor. "In the future, you can speak ancestral voice while tempering your sovereign divine power. You will be able to progress by leaps and bounds. Ancestral voice can also be used in battle. To put it bluntly, using ancestral voice at different times will have different effects." Zhou Xuanji was stunned. He didn't expect ancestral voice to be so powerful. He immediately began speaking ancestral voice and mobilized his sovereign divine power. Boom! A violent force broke out, rushing straight into the sky. He was immediately excited. So powerful. He began to review the ancestral voice, trying to remember all the different syllables. Shen Nianqing walked around him and looked at the temple. She laughed and said, "Ancestral Buddha, thank you. Your most powerful thing has been learned. Don't feel bad." A chuckle came from the temple. Afterward, Shen Nianqing left with Zhou Xuanji. The ancestral Buddha's voice followed, "An unprecedented genius, this era is interesting." In the space-time turbulence, Shen Nianqing excitedly introduced ancestral voice to Zhou Xuanji. In the current endless universe, only the ancestral Buddha has mastered ancestral voice. You are the second. I just hoped that you could learn the cultivation method. I didn't expect you to learn ancestral voice directly. No matter who it is, they can get the help of ancestral voice. But afterward, they can't remember ancestral voice, let alone make a language similar to ancestral voice. You are too powerful. Compared to you, Gu Tianlin is nothing. Seeing her so excited, Zhou Xuanji also understood that he had gotten a great opportunity. He smiled and asked, "Really? Can I help you find Hongmeng Heaven?" Shen Nianqing turned to look at him and said seriously, "You don't need to look." Zhou Xuanji rejoiced in his heart. Is Shen Nianqing going to let me go? You can become Hongmeng Heaven. Why do you still need to look? Shen Nianqing said with a mysterious smile. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji was stunned again. I can become Hongmeng Heaven? Is Hongmeng Heaven a kind of identity or realm? Shen Nianqing said with a smile, you have the aura of Hongmeng and have learned ancestral voice. If you don't become Hongmeng Heaven, who else is qualified? Next, it will be an era where you, Hunyuan Heaven, and Sovereign Heaven will rule together. Chapter 924. Zhou Xuanji was shocked by Shen Nianqing's words. He had always wondered who Hong Meng Heaven was, but he did not expect himself to become Hong Meng Heaven. One of the post-primeval three skies was in existence even stronger than the primeval paragon and the rainbow Qin Saint Monarch. Shen Nianqing's excitement didn't diminish. She began to tell Zhou Xuanji about the power of the post-ancient sovereign three heavens. Before the rise of the ancient absolute geniuses, the three heavens could be said to be the hottest legend in the endless universe. Even though a cardinal heaven expert had fallen, he had fallen because of the counterattack of the entire universe. His invincibility was still deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. Zhou Xuanji tried his best to remain calm. Hearing her words, he thought that he was already invincible. Don't talk about this. Just tell me when you will let me go. Don't talk about when I become Hong Meng Heaven, Zhou Xuanji cut her off and asked impatiently. Shen Nianqing smiled and said, Don't worry, I won't trap you. After we go back, as long as you break through to the supreme of the three courts, I will let you go. All I want is for Hong Meng Heaven to appear. So simple? Zhou Xuanji did not believe it. This guy definitely had other plans. However, since Shen Nianqing didn't say anything, he didn't bother to ask again. Even if he asked, she wouldn't tell him the truth anyway. After returning to Shen Nianqing's palace, Zhou Xuanji continued to absorb the opportunity stones. As he absorbed, he chanted the ancestral voice. He didn't need to circulate his cultivation technique to perfectly convert the opportunity stone's energy into supreme god force. Amazing! Zhou Xuanji was incredibly excited. No matter how firm his Tao heart was, he could not help but feel ecstatic. Shen Nianqing didn't disturb him and quickly left, leaving him alone to cultivate quietly. With the help of the ancestral voice, Zhou Xuanji absorbed the serendipity stones much faster than before. He stood in the air and the fate stones in the ocean-swallowing palace resonated with his ancestral voice. The fate stones turned into strands of spiritual qi and surged into his body. His cultivation rose steadily like a hot knife through butter. About a year. He began to break through to become a supreme of the three courts. An endless stream of opportunity stones descended from the sky, landing on the palace for him to absorb. The supreme divine power in his body was boiling like magma. His aura was terrifying and shook the entire palace. Little Sovereign floated not far away, his face full of admiration. This kid is going to surpass me. Little Sovereign lamented. He had been looking forward to this day for a long time, but he didn't expect it to come so soon. Just what kind of power was this ancestral sound? There was actually such a great fortune. Zhou Xuanji continued to break through. His sovereign's divine power seeped out of his body and formed a visible mist. It looked like a galaxy, dazzling and beautiful. Boom! The depths of his soul exploded, opening up an independent plane the size of a court that could contain an entire court. The great supremes of the three courts. Not only did his supreme god force undergo a quantitative change, it also underwent a qualitative change. He opened his eyes, and the exterminating divine light burst out from his eyes. The palace that was shaking non-stop suddenly stopped. Zhou Xuanji raised his right hand and sucked Little Sovereign into his hand. Little Sovereign screamed as he was sucked into the sword. With a leap, he broke through the roof of the palace and arrived above the vast sky, overlooking the boundless forest. His robe fluttered as Zhou Xuanji's aura revealed its sharpness. He scanned the world and didn't find Shen Nianqing's aura. He immediately teleported away. After he left, Shen Nianqing suddenly walked out of the huge forest. With one hand on her waist, she looked in the direction of Zhou Xuanji's departure with a smile. Hong Meng Heaven has finally appeared. There's going to be a good show. She murmured, smiling meaningfully. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji teleported into the turbulence of time and space. He sensed his clone in the Kunlun origin court and immediately rushed in that direction. Why isn't she here? It seems that she let me go on purpose, Zhou Xuanji silently thought. He didn't believe that Shen Nianqing would be so negligent. In any case, at least he escaped. Being trapped this time could be said to be a blessing in disguise. With the ancestral voice, Zhou Xuanji's potential and strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Zhou Xuanji thought of the square court realm that he had memorized and the court realm that had the ancient life lamp. He felt that he could take them all. He had to become stronger before Sovereign Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven recovered to their peak. Zhou Xuanji used the absolute time realm to quickly jump. In less than a year, he had rushed back to the Kunlun Origin Court. Seeing that the Kunlun Origin Court was intact and that all living beings were still living in harmony, a smile appeared on his face. He floated in the darkness and swept the entire Kunlun Origin Court with his divine will. Huh! He suddenly cried out in surprise. His expression turned strange. I actually have a grandson. Tanhua, that kid, usually looks introverted. I didn't expect him to have a child while I was away. Zhou Xuanji smiled and decided to see his grandson first. Now, Zhou Tianyuan was already 16 years old. He carried a giant sword on his back and traveled around the great world. Under the setting sun, he was sitting on the edge of a cliff, cultivating while facing the setting sun. Zhou Xuanji stood on the clouds and sized him up. He looks like his father. He also looks a bit like me, Zhou Xuanji said with a satisfied smile. Zhou Tianyuan had a dignified appearance. He had the cold temperament of a world swordsman. At least in terms of appearance, he had inherited Zhou Xuanji's excellent bloodline. At this moment, numerous black shadows dashed toward Zhou Tianyuan from all directions. They were dozens of assassins. They charged toward Zhou Tianyuan with scimitars in their hands. Zhou Tianyuan suddenly opened his eyes. He raised his hand, pulled out the giant sword on his back, and slashed downward. There was a loud bang. He flew up, and the cliff collapsed. The ground within a radius of 1,000 meters shattered. The assassins were so shocked that they leaped into the air. Zhou Tianyuan, you have offended the blood-drinking ancestor. You are destined to die. An assassin roared furiously. After that, he swung his blade toward Zhou Tianyuan. The blade sliced through the air, and a powerful gust condensed into blade qi. It swept across the sky and swept away the clouds. Zhou Tianyuan raised his giant sword, and a golden sword Buddha rose from the ground. The Buddha's head soared into the sky. Thousand-hand sword Buddha. Seeing this, Zhou Xuanji smiled in his heart. He has my demeanor back then. He mumbled. He did not interfere. To Zhou Tianyuan, he still had a chance of winning this battle. Most of the enemy's cultivation was lower than his. The battle lasted for about an hour. The battle ended. Zhou Tianyuan killed all his enemies. His clothes were dyed black and red with blood. He was injured too. After he landed, he stumbled and fell sitting on the ground. He supported himself with his hands and smiled bitterly. You are still unhappy that you won with fewer people? Zhou Xuanji's voice came. Zhou Tianyuan looked up and saw him standing elegantly on his sword in midair. Who are you? Zhou Tianyuan asked anxiously. His magic energy was almost depleted, and it was difficult for him to continue fighting. He scanned Zhou Xuanji with his mind but could not see through him. Undefeatable. Zhou Tianyuan made a judgment immediately. His eyes turned sharp. Zhou Xuanji said with a faint smile, Brat, why are you practicing the sword? Having heard that, Zhou Tianyuan frowned and replied, I was born to wield a sword. There's no reason. He suddenly realized that he could not see his opponent's face clearly. They were very close, but when his eyes fell on Zhou Xuanji's face, his vision became blurry. Chapter 925. Who are you? What do you want to do to me? Zhou Tianyuan asked anxiously. He held the great sword with both hands and propped himself up. Zhou Xuanji looked down at him and smiled. You seem to have been taught by many people. Was that move just now called the thousand-hand sword Buddha? Hearing this, Zhou Tianyuan was stunned. He gritted his teeth and asked, "How do you know?" The master who taught him this swordsmanship had said that the thousand-hand sword Buddha was an exquisite swordsmanship that did not belong to this world. How could other people know about it? As he traveled the world, he had never revealed the name, thousand-hand sword Buddha. Instead, the world gave this sword technique another name. How would I know? That's none of your business. Do you want to learn a stronger sword technique? Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. He had already divined Zhou Tianyuan's past. These fellows were all hiding it from Zhou Tianyuan. What was the point? Indeed there was. He also wanted to try. He had already frozen this space-time. Even Zhou Tanhua and Xian Xianghua wouldn't be able to detect it. Why are you teaching me? Zhou Tianyuan asked cautiously. Over the years, he often received pointers from experts. When he was young, he was happy, but as he grew up and entered the world, he felt that there was a conspiracy behind it. Zhou Xuanji was delighted and said, "You're not willing to become more powerful?" Zhou Tianyuan was silent, feeling conflicted. Should he learn it or not? He couldn't help but ask, "How strong is this sword technique?" "It can make you invincible in this world." "Is there such a powerful sword technique?" "It's a sword technique that not even your father has learned." "You know my father?" Zhou Xuanji smiled and did not say anything. He directly took out the Emperor's sword of life and death. The sword light flashed in Zhou Tianyuan's eyes, and a boundless aura descended, forcing him to kneel on the ground. "What kind of sword is that?" Zhou Tianyuan looked at the Emperor's sword of life and death in a daze. This was the first time he had seen such a domineering sword. His father's sword was far inferior to this sword. At this moment, he began to look forward to what sword techniques the other party would teach him. Zhou Xuanji passed down the ultimate chaos Dao to him, and a massive wave of memories flowed into his mind, giving him a splitting headache. He held his head with both hands and rolled on the ground. As his grandfather, Zhou Xuanji naturally would not harm him. Although his pain was intense, it was far from breaking down. Zhou Xuanji began to recite the ancestral voice. Upon hearing the ancestral voice, Zhou Tianyuan immediately calmed down. With the help of the ancestral voice, he quickly grasped the ultimate chaos Dao. He slowly got up and sat cross-legged. Just like that, his cultivation base skyrocketed. "This is the first gift I've prepared for you, and also a test for you." Zhou Xuanji mumbled. He wanted to make Zhou Tianyuan invincible in this world and see if this brat would succumb to his power. Back then, Zhou Tanhua was invincible in the world. He was cruel and heartless, which led to the counterattack of all living beings. In the end, the Tanhua sect ended up as a street rat. Zhou Xuanji, who also had invincible power, maintained the benevolence in his heart. He had never thought about how to enslave all living beings. Instead, he wanted all living beings to follow him and become stronger. He didn't want to force Zhou Tianyuan to be like him, he just wanted to see the kid's choice. Zhou Tianyuan slowly opened his eyes. He had a dream. He dreamt that he met an expert, causing his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. He even learned an incredible sword Dao divine ability. Wait a minute. This divine ability. His eyes widened in an instant, and his consciousness cleared. The ultimate chaos Dao was so deeply engraved in his mind. He felt that he could cast it just by raising his finger. The surging magic energy in his body indicated that this wasn't a dream. Zhou Tianyuan was ecstatic. He subconsciously looked up, but Zhou Xuanji was no longer there. He quickly got up and shouted, "Senior." Zhou Xuanji didn't answer him. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji had already returned to the Supreme Palace. The nearby spacetime had returned to normal. For Zhou Tianyuan, several years had passed, but in reality, it was just a second. In the distance, Zhou Tanhua, who was cultivating above the waterfall, suddenly opened his eyes. He furrowed his brow and muttered to himself, "What's going on with this kid's cultivation?" Although he had already let his son wander the world, the heart of a father and son was connected. If Zhou Tianyuan suddenly underwent a huge change, he would definitely sense it immediately. He began to calculate what Zhou Tianyuan had encountered. Unfortunately, he could only calculate that battle. He couldn't calculate Zhou Xuanji's appearance. Strange, why did it suddenly erupt? Zhou Tianhua furrowed his brow. He couldn't figure out the reason. Could it be because of his bloodline? He had had such an experience before. His cultivation had suddenly skyrocketed. It seemed that his father had made a big breakthrough, and his bloodline had affected his descendants. Thinking of this, a look of yearning appeared on his face. "Father, I wonder what your cultivation is now." He looked up at the horizon and muttered to himself. Inside the Supreme Palace, Zhou Xuanji sat on the golden throne, sensing the situation of the Kunlun Origin Court's various divine ranges. Everything in the lower realm was going with the flow, but the Kunlun Origin Court was extremely lively. With the advancement and improvement of the superstar competition, the Kunlun Origin Court had many heroes. It looked like it was going to recover its prosperity. Zhou Shaoxian, Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, and the others had also made a name for themselves in the Kunlun Origin Court. The Emperor Sword Divine Range had become a great divine range in a short time. Even without Zhou Xuanji's arrangements, many divine ranges had befriended them, especially the Tianyi Divine Range. Zhou Xuanji probed the Tianyi Divine Range with his divine sense. He suddenly thought of the Holy Ghost. He had an idea in his heart. He teleported the Holy Ghost into the palace through the air. The Holy Ghost was still asleep. It was curled up into a ball, motionless. Zhou Xuanji smiled and started to recite the ancestral voice. As soon as the ancestral voice appeared, the Holy Ghost trembled and jumped up. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, his expression became savage, and he started to soundlessly roar at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji frowned slightly and thought to himself, ancestral sound has no effect on him. He didn't believe in the supernatural and continued to recite the ancestral voice. At the same time, he used his supreme divine force to restrict the Holy Ghost so that it couldn't escape. As the ancestral voice attacked, the Holy Ghost gradually calmed down. Bits of black light floated up from his body, as if he was shedding his skin in flames. As expected, Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He was delighted in his heart. He could use the ancestral voice to investigate the secret of the Holy Ghost's birth. The Holy Ghost shed more and more skin, and countless black light spots floated around it. Its expression became serene, and it curled up like a baby in its stomach. Zhou Xuanji sent his divine sense into these black motes of light. In that instant, he felt that his divine sense was being burned, and his soul felt a stabbing pain, causing him to frown. He was already a great paragon of the three courts, so what kind of power could harm him? He suddenly thought of the blood bead black staff that Shen Nianqing had taken away. Could it be related to that thing? Soon, the Holy Ghost's body began to shrink, gradually turning into a newborn. Zhou Xuanji collected the black light spots into his palm and condensed them into a black ball. The ancestral voice came to an abrupt end. His eyes locked on the black ball, carefully observing it. Next, he took out the Lesser Supreme Sword and called Little Sovereign. When Little Sovereign came out and saw the Holy Ghost, his eyes immediately widened. Chapter 926. You actually helped the Holy Ghost get rid of its curse. How did you do it? Little Sovereign exclaimed, looking as if he had seen a ghost. His gaze then turned to the black ball in Zhou Xuanji's hand and asked in confusion, "What is this?" "This is the mysterious power attached to the Holy Ghost. I feel that it was because of it that the Holy Ghost ended up like that," Zhou Xuanji replied. When Little Sovereign heard this, he began to carefully look at the black sphere. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Now you can tell me why the Holy Ghost was born, and what is your relationship with the Holy Ghost?" At first, he felt that the relationship between the Holy Ghost and Little Sovereign wasn't ordinary. "Fine, I'll tell you then. In fact, this Holy Ghost was once my disciple. He pursued power excessively and searched for the ancient power. In the end, he ended up like the Holy Ghost. I still don't know what that power is. Legend has it that it has existed since the birth of the Kunlun origin court. Little Sovereign began to talk about the Holy Ghost's past with a melancholy look on his face. He disappeared for 20,000 years before reappearing. At that time, I had already become a supreme being, and it was I who personally sealed him. According to the records, there were other examples like this in the past, and they were called Holy Ghosts by the senior supreme beings. I once spent some time investigating the reason for the birth of the Holy Ghost, but I only know that there is such a force. As for what it is, I don't know. This is also an unsolved mystery of the Kunlun origin court. He looked at the Holy Ghost and sighed faintly. As a master, he was unable to save his own disciple. He was truly a failure. He then looked at Zhou Xuanji, and his expression immediately cleared up as he smiled and said, "Boy, you're becoming more and more powerful." What was he doing at Zhou Xuanji's age? He couldn't remember it clearly, but he knew that he didn't even dare to dream about becoming a supreme being at that time. "I let your disciple reincarnate?" Zhou Xuanji asked. He was more concerned about the black ball in his hand. As for the Holy Ghost itself, it had nothing to do with him. Little Sovereign nodded and said, "It's good to experience it once, lest there be a shadow in my heart." With a wave of his right hand, Zhou Xuanji sent the Holy Ghost into reincarnation. Then, he focused his attention on the black ball. Little Supreme Being didn't disturb him. He got into the Lesser Supreme Sword and slept peacefully. A few months later, Jiang Shui returned. When she saw Zhou Xuanji, she was pleasantly surprised and quickly went up to him. "When did you come back?" Jiang Shui stood beside Zhou Xuanji and asked charmingly. Only in front of Zhou Xuanji would she show such a cute side. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I have been back for a few months. You have done a good job as Shitian Goddess Mother. There are already many statues of you in the origin court." He put the black ball in his hand into his sleeve to avoid accidentally hurting Jiang Shui. "Isn't it all because of you? Have you seen your grandson?" Jiang Shui covered her mouth as she laughed. Ever since Zhou Xuanji became the sovereign, she truly felt carefree. She did not know much about what was happening outside the court, but she believed that Zhou Xuanji would be able to shake the heavens and earth, while everything within the court was very stable. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said with a smile, "Tanhua is not bad. He has a child so soon. Is it fast? Earlier than you?" Jiang Shui rolled her eyes at him and suddenly thought of Zhou Shaoxian. She didn't know when she would be able to get married. Zhou Shaoxian wasn't interested in love affairs. She only wanted to cultivate or play around. Zhou Xuanji could tell what was on her mind and comforted her. "She is still young. What's the hurry? When the time comes, she will naturally come. Moreover, with your current vision, who will be your son-in-law?" Hearing this, Jiang Shui felt that it made sense. If Zhou Shaoxian really got married now, she would not be at ease. After all, this girl would always have the heart of a child. Zhou Tanhua was just physically young, but this girl's heart was immature. After that, Zhou Xuanji began to talk about his experiences during this period of time. Jiang Shui listened to the story, but when she heard that Zhou Xuanji was in danger, she couldn't help but worry. Just as she thought, Zhou Xuanji had turned misfortune into blessing and even obtained a great opportunity. Hongmeng Heaven? Aren't you going to become the top ruler of the endless universe soon? Jiang Shui sighed. Even as Zhou Xuanji's wife, she was used to his speed of growth. But she still couldn't help but feel shocked. This was too outrageous. She carefully sized up Zhou Xuanji, wondering if Zhou Xuanji was the reincarnation of Hongmeng Heaven. Zhou Xuanji said helplessly, "Don't look at me like that. I'm not anyone's reincarnation. I'm just lucky." He increasingly felt that the Supreme Legendary Sword System was one of the sovereign's serendipity. Although the Supreme Legendary Sword System was becoming less and less helpful to him now, a tall building starts from a flat ground. Along the way, his greatest reliance was the Supreme Legendary Sword System, which was the serendipitous opportunity of the primordial world. Be careful in the future. Don't be arrogant at any time, understand? Jiang Shui exhorted. The higher you stand, the more you revere. Zhou Xuanji nodded. He had been reminding himself. Even someone as powerful as a sovereign, invincible in the world, didn't he still fall? Next, I will stay in Kunlun Origin Court to cultivate. When I go out in the future, I will bring the Kunlun Origin Court with me, Zhou Xuanji said with a soft smile as he pulled her into his arms. Jiang Shui snuggled in his arms, quietly feeling the warmth of his body. Jiang Shui snuggled in his arms, quietly feeling the warmth of his body. On this day, Zhou Xuanji summoned the 12 law ancestors and all the god pillars. Hearing his voice, the 12 law ancestors were very excited. They were one of the few who knew that Zhou Xuanji had left. Knowing that Zhou Xuanji had returned safely, they were finally relieved. After coming to the Supreme Palace, everyone knelt down and worshipped Zhou Xuanji. Get up. I called you all here today to start the plan outside the court, Zhou Xuanji said calmly. Zhou Xuanji said calmly. Then, he roughly explained the situation in the boundless universe. Knowing that there were countless courts and domains in the outside world, everyone in the palace was shocked. A god pillar asked carefully, since it's so dangerous outside the court, won't we? Zhou Xuanji was not angry but replied with a smile. Do you want to wait for the enemy to find us, or do you want us to take the initiative to explore a wider domain? I have already set my eyes on a court realm and am prepared to kill its sovereign and take over its court realm. I will act alone without you. Can you understand the mentality of those great sovereigns? Hearing this, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. The strong preyed on the weak. The plan is not to go outside the court directly. I need to gather a large number of geniuses. I will teach them the Tao personally and nurture them, Zhou Xuanji continued. Then, he changed the topic and said, when the time comes, you will gather with all the branch lords, and I will teach you the Tao alone. As soon as he said that, everyone became excited. The Tao of the Sovereign. Even Origin Fusion Divine Lord would benefit greatly from it. The Sovereign is benevolent. A law ancestor cried out excitedly. The others expressed their gratitude as well. Their faces were filled with fanaticism. How could they not look forward to the future by following such a sovereign? Throughout history, how many sovereigns were as benevolent as Zhou Xuanji without losing his ambition? Chapter 927. A piece of heavy news suddenly spread in the Kunlun Origin Court. The sovereign was going to select geniuses and train them personally. The sovereign divine ranges each had 100 spots, the super divine ranges each had 20 spots, the superior divine ranges each had 10 spots, the middle grade divine ranges each had 3 spots, and the low grade divine ranges each had 1 spot. As soon as the news spread, it shook the entire Kunlun universe. All the divine ranges were bustling with noise and excitement. The range masters and god pillars discussed this matter together. They all had to implement Zhou Xuanji's philosophy and be as fair as possible. Therefore, all the divine ranges began to hold aptitude tests. While the Kunlun Origin Court was in jubilation, Zhou Xuanji secretly came to the Emperor Sword Divine Range and sealed the spacetime to give special treatment to the Emperor Sword Divine Range. All the disciples who had gone out were brought back by him, including Zhou Tanhua and Zhou Shaoxian. He directly preached in the ancestral voice, immersing all the disciples in it. In just one day, thousands of disciples had broken through. In order to prevent alarming the other divine ranges, Zhou Xuanji turned his sovereign divine power into spiritual qi and poured it into the Emperor Sword Divine Range to ensure that the disciples could break through smoothly. 10 years had passed in the Emperor Sword Divine Range, but only a few breaths had passed in the outside world. Zhou Xuanji stopped preaching and said with a smile, "This matter can't be spread, understand?" He said it in a relaxed manner as if he was joking. But when his words reached everyone's ears, they couldn't help but smile. After Zhou Xuanji left, all the layers of the Emperor Sword Divine Range were boiling with excitement. Awesome! Zhou Shaoxian pulled Zhou Tanhua and kept talking excitedly. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Lin Changge, Chen Bantian, and the others also had a look of fanatical worship on their faces. After Zhou Xuanji's preaching, everyone had a breakthrough. The ancestral voices preaching had made their Tao heart qualitatively change. Their future cultivation would also be more stable. Zhou Tanhua sighed and said, "Father has been working hard after becoming the sovereign. Just the language that he didn't understand gave me a lot of insights. Except for those who could learn the ancestral voice, anyone who listened to the ancestral voice would stimulate their creativity and greatly improve their cultivation. Such a voice of creation, it was hard to find a second one in the endless universe. It seems that the outside plan is true. Master really plans to lead the Kunlun origin court." Xiao Jinghong said excitedly. His fists were tightly clenched. His eyes were full of expectation. It had been a long time since he had fought with Zhou Xuanji. The others began to fantasize as well. Zhou Shaoxian asked Zhou Tanhua to talk about the magnificence of the endless universe. This time, Zhou Tanhua didn't avoid talking about what he had seen and heard. Everyone exclaimed from time to time. After returning to the Supreme Palace, Zhou Xuanji continued to study the black ball. His spiritual will was already able to enter and endure the terrifying burning power. Inside the black sphere was chaos. Apart from the gray mist, there was nothing else, not even light. He did not believe that it was that simple. There had to be some kind of power, or else how could the Holy Ghost become a cursed existence? Anyone who was touched by the Holy Ghost would be cursed to death. He wanted the power of the curse. If he had the ability of the Holy Ghost, wouldn't his combat strength be off the charts? Unkillable. Anyone who touched him would be cursed. Just thinking about it made his heart burn. When the Kunlun Origin Court was selecting geniuses, he would seclude himself in the Supreme Palace and focus on studying the Black Sphere. In the blink of an eye. 5 years passed. Zhou Xuanji gathered the 12 ancestors, the God Pillars, the Range Masters, and the rulers of the various Origin Court's power centers in the Sovereign Plain. He also used the ancestral voice to preach the Tao, allowing them to enter a state of epiphany. He was not afraid that someone would surpass him because he was confident in himself. The stronger the Kunlun Origin Court, the better he would be able to display his abilities. Back then, there were many powerful cultivators under the sovereign heaven. Many of them were even famous in history. Their legends were still circulating in the endless universe. The sovereign is really getting more and more powerful. Namutiani sighed from the bottom of his heart after hearing the ancestral voice. Although he could not understand the ancestral voice, it could inexplicably move him. Countless insights emerged in his mind. He sighed while restraining the urge to have an epiphany. Next, like the other range masters, he sat down cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. After a while, the spiritual qi and Tao energy of the entire Kunlun Origin Court were drawn, rushing toward the sovereign plain like a hurricane. The creatures wandering in the Kunlun universe raised their heads in shock. What's going on? Don't panic. The Sword Emperor is here. What's there to be afraid of? It should be the Sword Emperor preaching the Tao to the powerful cultivators. My range master mentioned this to me before. Awesome. I really want to listen to the sovereign preaching the Tao. This is definitely an unprecedented golden age. Looking back in history, when has there ever been an era where everyone worked hard to cultivate without fighting? All the creatures felt deep veneration for Zhou Xuanji. Although Zhou Xuanji had not become the sovereign for a long time, he had already convinced everyone. The spiritual Qi riot this time would go down in history. Because this was the beginning of the Sword Emperor's kindness. After 10 years of preaching, the geniuses of each divine range were successfully selected. After only half a year of rest, all the geniuses were sent to the sovereign plain. They levitated in the void, looking at the sovereign palace in the distance. All of them were nervous and excited. Among them were many of Zhou Xuanji's acquaintances. Their feelings were the most complicated. They could only look up to the existence that they once regarded as immortal. Now, they had to come and listen to the preaching. They were not indignant. Instead, they felt an inexplicable sense of honor. Zhou Xuanji began preaching the Tao. With the ancestral voice, all the geniuses quieted down. Inside the palace, Zhou Xuanji preached the Tao while refining a black sword with both hands. This sword was made from the Holy Ghost's black sphere. He could not analyze the true power of the black sphere, so he had a sudden idea to refine it into a sword. He only succeeded after the sword spirit helped him refine the sword. Or else, he could not refine the black sphere by himself. I wonder what grade this sword will reach. Zhou Xuanji thought in anticipation. He could already sense a horrifying power stirring within the black sword. The preaching this time lasted for 10 years too. All the geniuses benefited greatly. When the preaching ended, they bowed to the sovereign palace together. Thank you, sovereign. Their voices gathered together and resounded across the sovereign plain, shaking everyone's heart. Cultivate well when you go back. The Kunlun origin court will depend on you in the future. Maybe one of you will be the next sovereign. Zhou Xuanji's voice came, and the geniuses were overwhelmed with emotions. After that, they were sent out of the sovereign plain by Zhou Xuanji. At the same time, Zhou Xuanji's sword was successfully refined. The sword spirit took the black sword and helped him tame it. At the same time, he determined its grade. Zhou Xuanji was very satisfied. He had finally gotten rid of the black sphere. However, he waited for a year and still did not hear from the sword spirit. So, he went to look for his grandson. Now, Zhou Tianyuan had grown up and became a peerless genius in that great world. He was full of mettle. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.